felt compelled to ping you and be like, "Is there any way you can somehow arrange some?"
Tyler, I felt so bad. I
It's
felt
so
so
funny.
bad. Yeah. Oh, but that means we're connected. Like we're deeply connected.
Funny.
You had no way of knowing that I was there.
I know. No, but that's why when you said, I was like, "Hang on a second, no way!" Like that's. No, but you know
Yeah.
what though? Maybe around the same time that you realized you were coming to my island, that might have sent me the psychic signals that led me to
Maybe.
Telepathy.
Hey,
teleport. What is that? Yeah,
How
telepathy.
far are you guys from each other,
Yeah,
island-wise?
half an hour.
yeah. Hey, Tyler. So I'm. One of my friends is having a boat party on Saturday. So I will.
Oh,
Make
you're gonna
sure
go
that
out
I go
cruising, huh?
around. Yeah, yeah,
Maybe you
yeah.
want to do
So
some snorkeling, huh?
might want to do that at that beautiful, pristine private bay.
Maybe you want to
We
go to
might
the
be able
best
to make a
snorkeling
break here.
spot in the Gulf of Thailand. Maybe.
Are you talking about nude snorkeling?
Wait, we're not talking about nude. No, Cheryl. Jesus Christ.
You gotta clip that.
Cheeky.
Jesus, shuffle.
Clip going.
Yeah,
But I'll
that's
see if
what
the
all those
caption
Watch
strange.
out, we
Oh my
have the
God.
scissors here. The scissors are in the room. Be careful what you say.
This is what
Cheryl,
those strange
you have
Westerners always like to
questions
do in
sometimes.
Asian
Naked
islands, right? They
snorkeling.
go around nude
You
and
heard
get
it
caught.
here.
Are you talking about nude snorkeling?
Cheryl, I love
Nude,
you.
whatever. They
But
always
you
like
are
to go
so
around nude and
awesome.
get caught, right? Not just in the sea, but in the mountains too. And then, like the what Kota Kinabalu, and then because they were like nude there, and then in the end there's an earthquake. Remember?
You're
It
doing.
offended
I'm
the
hanging out.
Hang
I'm
Kamisabi.
on,
hanging out with Cheryl from now on.
Cheryl. Did I just hear you say you've done nude snorkeling in the
No,
mountains?
no. I said it was on the news
Mm.
that this strange gaijin, strange Westerner went to Kota Kinabalu, and then they was doing some nude act there, and then in the end there was an earthquake because the god there got angry.
Oh,
I can send you
I
the
see.
article.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
It all makes sense.
I'm
oh,
realizing that sometimes 30 seconds is not long enough.
Behave yourself. The god is watching. Okay.
yes. Okay.
Okay. 2 minutes past the top of the hour.
Okay. Oh, Lord, I need to take a breath here. Hold on.
Please forgive me.
Okay. Do you need to pin the Twitter live streaming?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Cheryl. So we
Yeah.
do something new for those who don't know. And it turns out our friend Cal took advantage of this yesterday. Oh, wait. I got to go to the Twitter account. And now I got to pin the live stream to the top of the Twitter account. Boom. There it goes. Okay. So we're rolling.
And I
Okay.
gotta say, anybody on the East Coast is hardcore, man. It's 2 a.m. over here. That's like commitment.
Yeah, this is the European morning commute session, as I like to think of it, and the late owl
Asian.
West Coast, and this works good for Asians as well. So
Be nice, guys. My wife is in the
No,
audience.
Chris, commitment
okay.
is what you and I do from the West Coast.
Yeah, I know, but be nice, guys. My wife is in the
Both
audience. She thinks
broadcasts with your odd hours on the West Coast. So
be really nice. My wife's in the audience.
Yeah,
Like
bring
I
She's
tell
in the
her,
audience
wife
now.
up.
tell her,
Can
I tell her that
ask-
I'm an intellectual here.
Bring her
Yeah,
up.
ask your wife to raise the hand.
Yeah, no, I don't think he wants to do that, Cheryl.
Regina
Chris.
can't. No, I'd love it. I'm in.
Let
in
me
a different
guess. Is
city.
it
I'd love to
Regina?
hear your voice right now. Yep.
You
Chris,
see, I
when are you going to
gotcha.
do your customary morning beatboxing for us?
Regina,
welcome
join
to
us
Chris
on stage.
does beatboxing for 3 hours around the world every day, and we're gathered yet again
To listen to him flow.
Yeah, hear that flow.
No,
Okay.
he's really a good guy. We enjoy him. He's very smart.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like his
She's
other than the
unfortunately
fact that
married to me,
he
so
loves to talk.
guys, she's unfortunately married to me, so she knows all about it.
Hi, Regina. Welcome.
Hi, you guys. I'm
Welcome,
just
Regina.
eavesdropping because usually I eavesdrop on him when he listens at 11 o'clock and he's not here. So just wanted to say I really enjoy your show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful, Chris.
So everybody on stage follow her.
Hey, don't
Please
stalk
don't.
her,
It's very
Suzanne.
boring.
If
I'm
you guys
very
need to
boring in
send
comparison
blackmail
to my
tips, you know
husband.
where to send them.
Yeah, can we have some juicy inside information about things we can pick on him on?
Oh, don't let Johan in on secrets. That's kind of his whole game. So,
yep, he's doing social engineering now. Watch
yeah,
him.
exactly. Don't give your dog's name or your birthday. Kind of keep all that stuff to yourself. So the top story today, happy Wednesday, everybody, October 6th, is from Facebook. And the headline says, and this is kind of, I've never seen anything like this. The story source is from Facebook. And in fact, it's Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook page is the source of the news. And this is the top shared story. So the headline says, Mark Zuckerberg says that Facebook does not prioritize profit over safety. Okay. Okay. I think we'll be the judge of that. And does not prioritize profit over safety and well-being. Argues that many of the whistleblowers' claims don't make sense. And so here we go. And oh my Lord, this is a rather long blog post that he put on Facebook, or Facebook post. He says, I wanted to share a note I wrote to everyone at our company. So this is an internal, well, he might as well, because it was going to get leaked anyways. So you see, he's obviously, he learns quick. This Mark kid, he's no dummy. He learns very quick that if he writes an email to the whole company, it was going to get leaked in the Wall Street Journal tomorrow anyway, so he might as well share it with you all anyways. And now that's an interesting realization in and of itself, that tech companies and their leadership and their executives now all need to operate with the new kind of post-COVID hygiene, that everything that gets said or done in the company will end up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Fair enough? Is this not happening at Apple and at Facebook and at Coinbase and at here and there and everywhere? This is just the new, we just have to operate this way now, that there is no, unless you go to great lengths to be incredibly secretive, and Apple has done that in the past. And so you'll have more extremes in this regard. You're going to have even more extreme care taken to keep secret things secret. And then you're going to have a general posture that anything that isn't done in the highest of confidentiality systems is assumed to be leakable and shareable. So that was my first take before I even read this. Is Mark smart, intelligently, is like, hey, I sent this to the whole team, so it's going to end up in the Wall Street Journal, guaranteed. I might as well share it on my Facebook post and get that traffic to Facebook rather than the Wall Street Journal. So, hey everyone, it's been quite a week, and I wanted to share some thoughts with you all. First, the SEV that took down all our services yesterday was the worst outage we've had in years. We spent the past 24 hours debriefing how we can strengthen our systems against the kind of failure. This was also a reminder of how much our work matters to people. The deeper concern with an outage like this isn't how many people switch to competitive services or how much money we lose, but what it means for the people who rely on our services to communicate with loved ones, run their business, support their communities. Second, now that today's testimony is over, I want to reflect on the public debate we're in. I'm sure many of you have found the recent coverage hard to read because it just doesn't reflect the company we know. We care deeply about issues like safety, well-being, and mental health. It's difficult to see coverage that misrepresents our work and our motives at the most basic level. I think most of us just don't recognize the false picture of the company that is being painted. And I'll stop right there. That's the first two paragraphs out of 12. To say that what he's doing is actually kind of critically important, because, as I told you before, one of the big, even though some people might not agree with what the whistleblower is doing, the initial premise that she's whistleblowing on the fact that Facebook knowingly puts profits above the mental health of young Instagram users, for example. Okay, well, so did every women's magazine in the history of women's magazines. So did Barbie, and every, so does McDonald's. So does Coca-Cola. So, yeah, do we need whistleblowers on these things? This is just kind of, there's nothing illegal about that. So you're whistleblowing common sense here. So
it's standard business, isn't it?
Correct. So my point is, whistleblowers normally whistleblow on somebody did something illegal. Here you're whistleblowing on common sense. Tomorrow, the last day of October is Halloween. Hey everybody, I'm whistleblowing. I got hot shit here. The last day of October is going to be Halloween. Yeah, we know that. That's how it works. It's been that way for a long time now. So, but regardless if you think that this is a whole pointless exercise or not, it will have some kind of important impact. And here's the important impact that it can have. That I said this from the get-go, did I not? That what will happen is the kind of badge of honor that people wear for working at these big tech companies. Some people are very proud of the fact that they worked at Apple or Google or Facebook, and they used to wear it as a badge of honor. And I had friends who worked at all these companies, and we would go out for dim sum in Cupertino on Sunday morning, and you could see it, that they were very happy that they graduated from UCLA and then went to go work at Facebook or Apple or Google or whatnot, because their parents, it fulfilled their parents' dreams of having a job at a big, important company. Right? Now, what's fundamentally changing here is that badge of honor is now tarnished, and they no longer carry their head so high when they announce at the dim sum brunch on Sunday morning that they work at Facebook. You see what I'm saying? This has a fundamental psychological blow to a huge bunch of team members, and Mark Zuckerberg understands this. So that's why his first two paragraphs are, we're still the good folks. We're working on good stuff. We care about humanity. We're not evil. We are not the Nazis that they're painting us to be. You see what I'm saying? So this is actually fundamentally important stuff. And I think he understands the biggest casualty, the biggest threat to Facebook at this moment is not some big fine or some big regulation looming over their head. It's team member morale. So, third paragraph. Many of the claims don't make any sense. If we wanted to ignore research, why would we create an industry-leading research program to understand these important issues in the first place? If we didn't care about fighting harmful content, then why would we employ so many more people dedicated to this than any company in our space? Even ones larger than us. Meaning who? YouTube?
Yeah, I was going to ask who.
Yeah. Who's larger than you?
3 billion users.
Yeah.
I mean, what the fuck?
If we wanted to hide our results, why would we have established an industry-leading standard for transparency and reporting on what we're doing? And if social media were as responsible for polarizing society as some people claim, then why are we seeing polarization increase in the US while it stays flat or declines in many countries with just as heavy use of social media? Well, it's because those bad
of the fucking algorithm, dude.
Well, but it's also because there are countries that are intentionally feeding that are creating content aimed at specific countries. So, and I think he must be aware of that. So
he's digging himself a hole.
Just sounds a little disingenuous. He must know.
I mean, gonna rip this apart like MLK style, where they're just gonna take every single line and just disprove it.
But what I want to point out is that I'm sure somebody's going to remind him. We've read the headlines here that Facebook's security team regularly points to. So does Twitter's, by the way. Twitter and Facebook security team leaders have both pointed out that a lot of the misinformation campaigns, and boy, are there a lot of them, are coming from Russia and China. But they're aimed at the U.S. and other countries as well, but not all countries. So the division that you're seeing in the U.S. is an intentional consequence of those campaigns, and that's why you're not seeing it, for example, in, I don't know, Mexico, for example. Mark, you must know this, so this seems a little disingenuous to make that argument. The next paragraph says, the argument that we deliberately push content that makes people angry for profit is deeply illogical. We make money from ads, and advertisers consistently tell us they don't want their ads next to harmful or angry content. And I don't know any tech company that sets out to build products that make people angry or depressed. The moral, business, and product incentives all point in opposite direction. And again, I'll take a little issue with that point, because where your ads are shown in Facebook will likely be not near. Not every post has
It's
to
like,
be anger
this
inspiring.
voice of dissent was brought to you by Ivory Soap.
Right.
Like, they're not fucking doing that, Mark.
Right. It's not, you're not putting the ads directly next to the angry content, and we're not accusing, no one's accusing Facebook of every post being anger inspiring. It doesn't need to be every post. It could be one out of 10 posts. And then you've got this nice balance of ragecraft, which keeps people engaged, and not filling the feed with negative content that advertisers don't want. So you can obviously do both. Mark, both things can be true at the same time, and you know this, so you're a smart dude. But of everything published, I'm particularly focused on the questions raised about our work with kids. I spent a lot of time reflecting on the kinds of experiences I want my kids and others to have online, and it's very important to me that everything we build is safe and good for kids. The reality is that young people use technology. Think about how many school-age kids have phones. Rather than ignoring this, technology companies should build experiences that meet their needs while others keep them safe. We're deeply committed to doing industry-leading work in this area. A good example of this work is Messenger Kids, which is widely recognized as better and safer than alternatives. We're also working on bringing this kind of age-appropriate experience with parental controls for Instagrams too. But given all the questions about whether this could actually be better for kids, we've paused that project to make more time to engage with experts and make sure anything we do would be helpful. Like many of you, I found it difficult to read the mischaracterization of the research into how Instagram affects young people. As we wrote in our newsroom post explaining this, the research actually demonstrated that many teens we heard from feel that using Instagram helps them when they are struggling with the kinds of hard moments and issues teenagers have always faced. In fact, in 11 of 12 areas on the slide referenced by the journal, including serious areas like loneliness, anxiety, sadness, and eating issues, more teenage girls who said they struggle with that issue also said Instagram made those difficult times better rather than worse. But when it comes to young people's health or well-being, every negative experience matters. It is incredibly sad to think of a young person in a moment of distress who, instead of being confronted, has their experience made worse. We have worked for years on industry-leading efforts to help people in these moments, and I'm proud of the work we've done. We consistently use our research to improve this work further. Similar to balancing other social issues, I don't believe private companies should make all of their decisions on their own. That's why we've advocated for updated internet regulations for several years now. I have testified in Congress multiple times and asked them to update these regulations. I've written op-eds outlining the areas of regulation we think are most important related to elections, harmful content, privacy, and competition. We've committed to doing the best work we can, but at some level, the right body to assess trade-offs between social equities in our democratically elected Congress. For example, what is the right age for teens to be able to use internet services? How should internet services verify people's ages? And how should companies balance teens' privacy while giving parents visibility into their activity? If we're going to have an informed conversation about the effects of social media on young people, it's important to start with the full picture. We're committed to doing more research ourselves and making more research publicly available. That said, I'm worried about the incentives that are being set here. Oh, yes. We have an industry-leading research program so that we can identify important issues and work on them. It's disheartening to see that work taken out of context and used to construct a false narrative that we don't care. If we attack organizations making an effort to study their impact on the world, we're effectively sending the message that it's safer not to look at all. That's a great point, by the way. That's a fantastic point. In case you find something that could be held against you. Brilliant. That right there is that's a genius maneuver right there. That's the conclusion other companies seem to have reached. And I think that leads to a place that could be far worse for society. Even though it might be easier for us to follow that path, we're going to keep doing research because it's the right thing to do. I know it's frustrating to see the good work we do get mischaracterized, which, boy, yeah, you've said this a few times now, Mark, especially for those of you who are making important contributions across safety, integrity, research, and product. Please don't leave the company. We love you. We love you. We love you. You're good people. Please don't leave the company. I added that last sentence. But I believe that over the long term, if we keep trying to do what's right and delivering experiences that improve people's lives, it will be better for our society and our business. I've asked leaders across the company to do deep dives on our work across many areas over the next few days so we can see everything that we're doing to get there. Last paragraph. When I reflect on our work, I think about the real impact we have on the world, the people who can now stay in touch with their loved ones, create opportunities to support themselves and find community. This is why billions of people love our products. I'm proud of everything we do to keep building the best social products in the world, and grateful to all of you who work for the work you do here every day. End of post. Okay.
Did anybody else spot the part where he potentially laid the seeds for a future argument of ISP responsibilities for regulation of teen access to the internet?
Yes,
where he was talking
which age, what's the right age and whatnot.
Exactly. Whereas if you're asking Facebook to regulate teen access and what they should be exposed to, then why aren't you asking the ISPs to regulate how much access and what age access teens have on the internet and why they aren't required identification first?
The paragraph that I pointed out, the brilliant jujitsu move here is he's exactly right in saying it's disheartening to see, our research being mischaracterized. And so you're basically putting us in a position to stop doing research so that we don't find things that might paint us out to be bad. Just like now we know why McDonald's has never released research. Now we know why Coca-Cola has never released research. Now we know why teen magazines have never released research, because it's obvious they would come to the same conclusions, that they're bad for their own users. And so that would be the easy path for us to go down. And that's what you want, fine, no more research. That's easy. We just saved ourselves $1 billion a year. No problem. No more research. And now you won't be able to use our own research against us in this way. That's a really great point. So that's the top story of the day. Number 2. People, let me see. There's a whole bunch of big publications that are talking about his blog post. And they say Bloomberg's headline says Zuckerberg responds to claims that Facebook prioritizes profit as just not true. CNBC says Zuckerberg rejects claims that Facebook prioritizes profits over user safety and the likes. South China Morning Post, Zuckerberg responds to claim Facebook splits profits over safety. And yep.
Are these, why go this route? Why not just say, hey, we're going to do better?
This is more. Here's
trying to stave off.
Yeah, interestingly,
or is he trying to stave off,
Yeah, interestingly, this letter is aimed at Facebook's team members, right? And it's not really addressed to the general public, right? And that's why he says, I'm just sharing an email that I sent to the whole team, an all hands email, right? And he's sharing it because better he share it than the Wall Street Journal share it, because guaranteed the Wall Street Journal would share it if he didn't. And he might as well get the traffic to his blog post rather than to the Wall Street Journal. But my point is, he felt compelled to write a letter to the whole company saying, we're mischaracterized, we're not bad, we're good, we're doing great research, keep it up, I'm so proud of you, we do great things, because he understands what I said would likely be the big casualty out of all this is losing team members who are going to lose their badge of honor that they work at Facebook. And he's correctly very concerned about that.
Well, do you want to work for a weasel or do you want to work for someone who's
going to
stand up and do the right thing?
Precisely my point. He needs to make the strong argument that we are we are still a force for good in the world, not bad. Because if people start getting the sense that when I meet somebody new and I get introduced to somebody that I work at Facebook, the reaction on their face could have an incredibly strong be taken as a strong signal for my ego's validation as to, I'm working for Darth Vader, and if I feel like I'm working for the Imperial Arm, what do we call the Darth Vader Palpatine side of the Force, the dark side. If I'm working for the dark side, then I'm going to have a reevaluation, and that challenges my whole self-image and my ego, and I'll have to go, work somewhere where I feel like I'm doing good work. Mark understands this. This is very, 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 very real. If you live in the Bay Area, and every time you meet new people announce where they work, and that is a big part of their self-identity, where they work at these tech companies. It's like, which team are they on? And, if this team is now exposed to be the dark side, and people start believing that they're the dark side, then you're going to have a whole bunch of people jumping ship, and he understands that. And it'll make it harder to recruit people there, much harder. And it will make it harder to keep the good people are there. And he doesn't, that could be huge. If they see a diaspora of people leaving, that would be the beginning of the end of Facebook. That's what that, by the way, when you look at the likes of Microsoft and IBM and how they struggle to maintain, a foothold on the pantheon of, big tech and innovation, they struggle because people don't go around wearing a big badge of honor that I work at IBM or Microsoft. And that's why it makes it harder to recruit them, and it makes it harder to keep them and to get the best talent. And these big tech companies are in a battle for the best talent. Whoever has the best talent wins. And they know that. That's the game. And if it's very difficult to get the best talent if you're the dark side, or if people perceive.
Well, it's like this though.
So how does the CFO resigning fits into this then?
Say again?
How does the CFO of Facebook resigning, especially in the middle
CTO.
of all this? Oh, the CTO, sorry.
Precisely my point.
Yeah, how does it fit in? Like, he is a very high position,
incredibly
and
high.
He resigned in the middle of all this chaos.
Correct.
So doesn't that confirm something is wrong? And
yes.
maybe Zuckerberg is not being genuine.
As a leader, this is a watershed moment for a leader where you need to show accountability. You can't be talking about, you can't do a 12 paragraph excuse thing. This is like trying to save a marriage at this point. And you need to say, hey, man, I've been a bad husband. So look, my wife's down there. This is not alluding to anything. I swear to God. I've been a bad husband.
Sometimes the spouse needs to take the blame. I mean, one of the spouses just
it's
say,
just
okay,
like,
put it
hey,
on
look, I
me. I'll
haven't,
take it
we
and
haven't
leave.
been, this relationship is so freaking important to me. My relationship, your relationship with your children is so important to me. We need to do something about it. And not a 12 paragraph rebuke about, well, I think I'm right because of this, and I think I'm right because of that. And, well, maybe I shouldn't even told you that I went to the casino last night. Because Ken doesn't tell his wife he goes to the casino.
Chris,
Sorry,
and to
Ken.
your point, like the very first sentence was like, wow, it's been a rough week. And, as soon as I heard Tyler read that, I thought he's really working to build empathy, trying to get, trying to say, you know what, I'm human and I'm really having a tough go at it. And that, for me, set the tone of the entire blog post. And it was clear to me at that point that he was not going to take accountability for whatever findings came out of that report.
It's probably because he also has to talk from so many different angles. He's got so many different quote unquote audiences that he was writing for, whether it's his employees, whether it's his investors or ad agencies, ad companies. I mean, I think he was just trying to talk to kind of make sure that, everything is covered across the map.
But let's also, real quick, this is Robert. I know everybody's piling on Zuckerberg and he deserves some of it, but like a CTO quitting doesn't make him honorable. I mean, he's there 13 years, so he wears some of this. CEOs only know so much, and those of us who have been well under them, more middle management and things like that, we're just as much to blame because there's a lot of things that never bubble up to the top. So yes, but they also have some strong troopers who are at the apex of a number of these decisions that need to be held accountable to, that you'll
But
never
also,
know their names.
But also, do you guys really think that, in this context of those reports, that he really has something to be so, like sorry for and to like really admit like mea culpa, mea culpa? Like, have they really done something so bad? They've done the research. I mean, I'm kind of, buying what he's saying in a way, like with the especially to Tyler's point, right? Saying like, well, if we didn't care, we wouldn't do the research. We're doing the research because we care and we want to know, and we want to know how we can address this. And, even when you look at the findings, it's a bell curve, right? So like it's the normal way that things happen within the population, that people react to stuff, right? So like, yes, 30% of the people, like have a bad reaction, 30% have a good reaction. That's like the normal way that you would see it in a population. And, like I mentioned, if you look at the way that media in the past influenced the way that people feel about themselves, I think it was much, much worse. So like, really, I mean, like, yeah, he can say like, yeah, okay, we found these things, and maybe he should say we are looking at addressing this in this and this way. But like, in a way, does he really have something so bad to apologize for in this specific context? Honestly, I don't think so.
I think
I
the
think he
problem.
does. I think he does because I think the research is a very, very tiny percentage of the whole thing. We need to look at Facebook in a totality. Even Tyler, you were pointing out when he was having a bad week that it started not just with the research. It was starting that there were really Facebook high management were like trying to do the right thing and asking feedback from their own people. And when they got the feedback saying that we're not doing what we say we are doing, they haven't done anything. You take those feedbacks and you try to correct course if you believe in it. And there has been a lot. There was interference in 2016 election. He even said no to Obama when he said, we see that something is happening. And he said, no, you don't know what is happening. It's not. And then the January 6th insurrection happened, and then they did the data manipulation. In fact, it just disappeared. So he's got a lot of things that was piling. So the research is just a very, very tiny percentage that just became the very last element in that week-long kind of bad news and newspaper coming out. So to me is okay, maybe the research is something else that he can hang on and like you say, doesn't have to apologize. But the totality of what was happening with Facebook, I think they need to do the right thing and correct the course. And even when they came out and say, oh, Facebook is democratizing access and communication, and then we learned that they do have actually a special account for special people. So there are things that they are doing. It's coming out and we all know. And you just, even Tyler, you just read those email and some of it is disingenuous. So people are like, they hang on that and say, okay, why can't you just be honest about the whole thing? So to me is we should look at it in a totality.
Putting aside the like you were just saying there, Messi, the research, the 22,000 out of 3 billion sample size that they could have chosen, the 0.0007% of their users that they used for this research, putting that aside, I think a huge part of the problem that they have is anecdotal, right? Because as much as they might put out research that says we're helpful and we don't harm and everything else, I think probably every person in this room, including in the audience, knows one or two or three people that have some some sort of problem or made some sort of negative comment about Facebook. As in, it's this ethereal sort of, whether it's deserved or not for the platform, it's this ethereal sort of accepted societal thing now, which is, yeah, Facebook sucks me in and I spend more time on it than I should, and it distracts me from playing the piano, and my teenager had cousin's teenager had, or my sister's my niece had problems with it. This one thing happened. It's very anecdotal, but it's anecdotal across all of society at this point. So, Tyler, when you were saying that for the developers wanting to work on the cutting edge of stuff, when you're going out, it's like, oh, you work at Facebook. Oh, what's that like? I've heard that they're bad. And this research, I don't think, if you spend time looking into it, really helps sort of dissuade that. The other point that I wanted to make, and I'm not privy to what happens inside of it, I'm not privy to exactly what technologies are working on, what technologies Facebook's working on, but I think maybe there was a point where Facebook was on the cutting edge of everything. Whereas if you wanted to work on the cutting edge of development, especially ML and AI and that kind of thing, it was Facebook. And I think they're potentially experiencing the slowdown that for instance, the likes of Apple, with their devices, there's a point where you can't innovate as fast. And if you're no longer the only one doing the cutting edge of stuff, and if
Well, they're
every
trying to
time you
develop the
mention you work at
metaverse, right?
if
Like
there is,
they're
but not everybody is working on that. Not everybody gets to work on that on like the AR and VR stuff. So when you're no longer when the agreements between companies in American Silicon Valley have broken down, as in they had this soft agreement of I won't poach yours, you won't poach mine, that's broken down. So now developers and engineers are probably getting more invitations for poaching than they were before, and then you no longer get this, wow, you work at Facebook, that's cool, anymore, because of the public attitude for it. And they're no longer necessarily doing the leaps. And it's like, what is my company doing? What is it working towards? Well, it's working towards optimization of ads, or it's working towards it's what is there for that person anymore working at that company?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the sad truth of this is that at the size of the platform, most engineers just work on maintenance, work on stabilizing SDKs and just making sure that the platform functions, right? So there's a very small team of people that get to work on the very cool things.
Exactly, you get siloed very quickly in these
Yeah,
large companies. You get
yeah,
siloed. This is your class. This is your file. You
yeah,
monitor this. This is
yeah.
your section. You monitor this, and you don't touch anything outside of it.
Yeah, this is also a big thing that we're doing in our engineering teams, even internally, where we need to start doing this like innovation cycles because they get clustered into the same work for months and months on end. And and I mean, it's miserable if you have to just do one thing.
Marie, it sounds like
unfortunately, if you want
there's
to do
something covering your mic, by the way.
if you want to do something fun, you got to go and join TikTok these days. And then, like, if we're talking about, this, I forget how you called it, Tyler, but this kind of like, your values based choice of work,
Right.
as in
The meaningful economy. Yeah.
the meaningful economy. Exactly. Like when you have that in contrast with doing cutting edge stuff, there's like a question of what are you going to choose, right?
Right.
So,
well, I think that's part of the appeal of the, Facebook jumping high and waving a big flag saying we're going to be a metaverse company, which is, trying to get all of the best metaverse talent in house.
They just don't get it though, Tyler. Like if you want to make a meaningful impact on society, you become a better tool for society.
Yeah,
You
but
don't make
I think
excuses
there's
for why you're
a lot of the
you know.
metaverse folks believe that
And I
the
know I'm
metaverse
getting so
can be
preachy
a
here. I know I'm
powerful
getting so
tool.
preachy here, but like people have mentioned, regardless if it's Facebook or any whoever, they just happen like Apollo 13, right? If I'm the one in the seat when I hit the button, it would have been me. Facebook just happens to be the one in the seat hitting the button, and human society is just showing itself. And this is where I will defend Facebook. Facebook's not the problem. Society's the problem. Facebook's the tool that's not properly allowing us to communicate as human beings the same way we are able here. And maybe it's just the platform wasn't built for it. But I know this is much more connecting of a platform than Facebook has ever been. And maybe Facebook can do better. And I'll just shut up.
But I agree that it goes in the same topic. You can use technology for the greater good, or you can use technology simply just to make more money and have more influence and more power. And I think there's a fine line where, as a business leader, we can decide, do we want to be net positive or net negative? You know, is it something? And again, we know that also more and more people care about. So this is twist, not just I want to do good and therefore I have a trade off because I might do less profit, I have a less attractive business, or I might be less competitive. I think this is actually flipping now in today's world when we look at the impact on the society or the planet we want to have. But therefore, so in the same sense, I would not defend the business leader because you have a choice and you can make the choice and you can deliberately do something good, or you can say, I'm sorry, I have to run a business, I have to make money, and that's what I'm primarily my main aim is at here. And this is where I don't believe so far what is being said now on the intention of that company, because Facebook never had the goal to actually initially specifically help people or make better people. It's to connect people, and you can share the content you want to share. And I think there's an ethical fine line to make between that choice of being a business leader.
So there's a new article that just came out from Ars Technica.
Sorry,
Yep.
Tyler. I just had a question from you guys just on what you were saying and also what Florian just said. So do you guys think that it was after all this algorithms, trying to monetize obviously in advertising and making sure that, the right ads get in front of the right people and conversations. Do you think that, looking at it and kind of, looking through its core, that maybe this whole algorithms technology kind of helped make everything worse, and that things maybe were better before, like you said, yesterday or the day before, when everything was just done chronologically, and there might have been a more balanced views and people with different views and all sorts of. Do you think that this might have at its core played a role in kind of what's happening right now, slowly kind of like tearing down and tearing down and tearing down to the company and the people and kind of what's happening in the culture of social media? Do you guys think that maybe that could have played a bigger role and could have gone back to basics, maybe to have fixed things?
That's what the whistleblower said. If you watch the video she did on CNN, is she really broke it down and said that, look, the ability to do it chronological is there, but it's off by default. She says, I think it should be on by default. And I think a lot of things would not drive, the algorithm wouldn't be driving it based on engagement. It would be driving it based on chronology. And so I think you have a valid point, because that's what the whistleblower saw as like the one shot solution.
Because it kind of seems like things just started going, in this direction right
And
around the same
Tyler
time.
mentioned it too.
Yeah, that's what I was asking from
Okay.
you guys.
Yeah, I see it too, like as a user of Instagram, like from a micro influencer type of perspective. When Instagram was chronological, like it was so much better. And then like the algorithms just started cutting out content and lifting content which was stolen from other influencers, essentially. So yeah, I think the algorithms are questionable.
So there's two articles that are interestingly related to this whole brouhaha that have come out in the past few hours. But before I read both of those, the essence of those, the whistleblower appeared before the Senate.
And sorry, I just want to clarify, it wasn't CNN. I was watching Bloomberg, and Bloomberg actually had a really good piece on it. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. And the CNBC wrote a piece about the Senate hearing from the whistleblower, saying that Facebook, the headline says, Facebook puts growth above public safety and must be more transparent. Section 230 reform is not enough, and the buck stops at Zuckerberg. And Andy Stone from Facebook replied to this article on Twitter saying, just pointing out the fact that the whistleblower did not work on child safety or Instagram or research these issues and has no direct knowledge of the topic from her work at Facebook, which is a fair point. She found some documents about meetings she was not in from departments she has no connection to and is making assumptions based on those documents about what happened in those meetings. That's an interesting point about what the real conversations are internally at Facebook about these issues.
Tyler, this is Rob. I have a concern with some of this on the research side
Yeah.
because in organizations, we all position and ask questions and then say, go run with it. What if this happened? What if that happened? And we do those things. My concern for organizations are if all this stuff continues to leak out, it can make you look bad, even though you're trying to dig into
Right.
to understand it and you're not given enough time. And I mean, like with my company, we used to look at dyes. We got beat up over mac and cheese having a different dye in Europe versus the US. And it's because some people went on the internet and went hog wild over it, but what we had was legal. Well, granted, we ended up changing it. But if I, as a sales ops type of person, get a hold of R&D information and I don't understand it and I start leaking it, there's implications to that. And that's what I have a concern about. And it's going to make companies more cautious and maybe not as nimble. But on the other side, recruitment, if I'm old blue chip company, I'm licking my chops and hoping some of those tech people don't go to Facebook anymore, and maybe the GEs of the world and IBMs might start picking them up.
But if we look at things, I think we can do a nice analogy of actually, you know, the exponential growth of a virus, for example, if we do things in a certain way, and then there are ways where you can kick in, and that basically stops that exponential growth. And you have the same on the tech side. For example, if I look at Facebook and I look at a video, and chronologically there might be because of the algorithm, you know, have a sequence of videos going. You have one, and then kicks in another one, and kicks in another one. But now, actually, when you're looking at one, and the longer you're looking, and you're going to the end, in between, the algorithm sneaks another one, which is the same content, so that you're hooked and keep watching and keep watching. So it's not just chronologically, it is made for you to have a hook to keep watching, keep watching, keep watching, keep watching. So this has nothing to do with a value for humanity or helping you or making you a better person. This is specifically made, you want to have an exponential growth so people keep watching. We have seen the opposite. You've had Facebook down and people were going crazy and jumping on other platforms to keep talking, keep watching, and doing similar things or keep the communication. So I understand that there is a choice to be made for a company saying I might not be able to stop doing what I do because I will actually run out of the business or somebody else kicks in and goes faster, you know, and my kids were moving over to TikTok, you know, and then I went to Telegram and Signal maybe for the messaging side because for 6 hours I couldn't. But that's specifically the equation where I believe ethically to say I want to do good, you know, and of course I want to discredit a whistleblower. So I find arguments, and you have the same discrediting, you know, in the politics or whatever, you know, just make a case so you discredit someone, so the opinion the person has might be wrong, and therefore the whole statement is wrong. But if I look at the company and I drive a business and I'm a CEO and running my businesses, there's a fine line of a choice. Do I want to keep growing under whatever circumstances and knowing I'm actually doing harm to people and I have an direct impact on the mental health of youth? I have a direct impact of people not being productive or happy or being divisive only because the algorithm just makes a job and I let it go. And I can say, I'm not really sure. I'm not the CTO. I don't know the details. And I think there's a very, very fine line of the actions I take and the impact I have on humanity in a very, very unethical way.
Florian, there's an additional piece of context that's required there, because I love what you've said, is that if my neighbor cheats on his wife, for instance, or does something dastardly, none of you people will give a crap because he's my neighbor. If the president of the United States does exactly the same action, everybody reacts differently. Why does everybody react differently? It's the same action because he's in a position where he should be above certain things. So if you have a platform with 10,000 users and you're using the kind of algorithms that Facebook is using and whatnot, and the tactics and those engagement pushing and that kind of thing, all the things you just described, Florian, to care. We're not going to talk about it really in here because it's 10,000 users. When you have 3 billion users, when the actions that you take and the commercialization of your users is on such a scale, the rules are different. Facebook has to operate by different rules because of its sheer size, because every tiny little decision that they make, and it sucks for them as a company because they're just trying to make profit. But when you have 3 billion users, the rules are different for you. And that's the context that's necessary here. They cannot play by the same games of being able to do whatever they want to push infinite growth.
Okay, so a couple of related articles here. The one just came out from Ars Technica. The headline says, Facebook misled investors about shrinking user base, ex-employee alleges. And why that is so interesting is, as predicted, you will also, now that this whistleblower has gotten a little attention, a whole bunch of team members at Facebook who are not so happy about their current lot in life are likely to realize, oh, I know some things that I can inflict karma on this company if I get disgruntled. And so now you have additional people taking on the whistleblower role. And so now you have an ex-employee, surprise, surprise, saying Facebook misled investors about the shrinking user base. Complaint to SEC. Facebook mishandling of duplicate accounts was extensive fraud. Facebook has been misleading investors about its shrinking teen and young adult user bases and about the actual number of Facebook users. Former employee Frances Hagen, it's the same person. Sorry, my mistake. Former employee Frances Hagen alleged in a whistleblower complaint filed with the, this is one of her 8 complaints that she filed with the SEC. For years, Facebook has misled investors and advertisers about its shrinking user base in important demographics, declining content production, and the true number of recipients of reach and frequency advertising, the complaint said. Noting that Facebook's stock valuation is based almost entirely on predictions of future advertising revenue, the complaint cites evidence showing that Facebook has, for years past and ongoing, violated U.S. securities law by making material misrepresentations and omissions in statements to investors and prospective investors, including through filings with the SEC, and that's the illegal bit, testimony to Congress, that's also very, you're under oath when you're testifying before Congress, and online statements and media stories. Facebook has misrepresented core metrics to investors and advertisers, including the amount of content produced on its platform and growth by individual users, especially in high-value demographics, the young users. The complaint said the Facebook's advertising algorithm did not properly account for what the complaint calls single users and multiple accounts, and the company thus systemically overcharged advertisers by misrepresenting the number of individual users, Hagen alleged. Facebook's mishandling of duplicate accounts continues extensive fraud against advertisers and misrepresentations to investors. Okay, now, what I find interesting about that now this is proper whistleblowing. This is, you found somebody doing something properly illegal. This is classic whistleblowing. However, Ms. Hagen is on the record having said multiple times now she doesn't want to harm Facebook. I'm not doing this to harm Facebook. I'm trying to fix Facebook. Well, when you can't really make both arguments simultaneously, that you're not trying to harm Facebook and then and then point out to the SEC that Facebook was lying under oath to the SEC. So I don't know that we can take her at her word that she's not trying to hurt Facebook. So, but this is true whistleblowing. If it's proven to be true, if and no doubt there will be an investigation about it, and she could be right. It wouldn't shock many people if this were true. So that's an interesting headline. And then there's another related interesting headline from our friend Faraz from Bloomberg that says Erdogan from Turkey, is he president or prime minister? President. President Erdogan's beef with social media gets louder after Facebook outage. Facebook's massive outage on Monday spurred calls for a new digital order by Turkish President Erdogan, a man with little tolerance for political criticism on social media. Erdogan's communication director said the hours-long shutdown showed how fragile social networks are and urged a rapid development of domestic and national alternatives. Told you. They want their own domestic replacements for the big tech. I mean, they would happily find any reason to do that. And I love the transparency. Here's Turkey saying we need our own domestic alternative to these American tech companies, which they can control. And anyone who knows anything about Erdogan knows their real reason for wanting to do this is for control. So, yeah, of course they want their own domestic alternative. It would be nice economically, to have their own digital ad network, but boy, would they love the control. And they would love to kick Facebook out of Turkey and have their own domestic version that they could control. Turkey's political leaders have strained relations with social media platforms for much of the past decade as dissents increasingly used those services to criticize Erdogan. The president, and he's one of these classic, strong guys who don't like, people having the power to talk back to them. The president has repeatedly threatened to shut down some social media, citing what he considered to be personal attacks against him and his family. And of course, he can threaten to shut it down. And if he does shut it down, then they would quickly shut him out of Turkish politics. You would likely have a massive rebellion if he were to shut down Facebook. So he can't. So it's really interesting to see the relationship of Facebook and Turkey. So, yeah, they're using the outage as an excuse for why they need their own domestic alternative. Interesting
That
point.
will never happen.
Yep. Yeah, the people of Turkey won't let him shut down Facebook in Turkey. So
I'll tell you something. Being here, and my background in music and entertainment. It is incredible to me to see the amount of support that they put behind, YouTube. To look at. I actually had some meetings last year with some companies, and I was double checking to see if those numbers are real. And we got some powerful numbers between what's going on here in Turkey and YouTube and the followers and support. So they're high up on the social media world, and I don't think that's going to happen. But I think he needed to say what he needed to say, but kind of as a heads up. But that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So Facebook says a command issued. They've now addressed the outage more directly by saying that the cause of the outage was a command that was issued to assess the availability of global backbone capacity. There you go. They did some kind of command to assess the availability of global backbone capacity, and that's what sent the thing into the tailspin. Now that our platforms are up and running as usual after yesterday's outage, I thought it would be worth sharing a little more detail on what happened and why, and most importantly, what we learned from it. The outage was triggered by the system that manages our global backbone network capacity. The backbone is the network Facebook has built to connect all our computing facilities together, which consists of tens of thousands of miles of fiber optic cables crossing the globe and linking all our data centers. Those data centers come in different forms. Some are massive buildings that house millions of machines that store data and run the heavy computational loads that keep our platform running, and others are smaller facilities that connect our backbone network to the broader internet and the people using our platforms. When you open one of our apps and load up your feed or messages, the app's request for data travels from your device to the nearest facility, which then communicates directly over the backbone network to the larger data centers. That's where the information needed by our app gets retrieved and processed and sent back over the network to your phone. The data traffic between all these computing facilities is managed by routers, which figure out where to send all the incoming and outgoing data. And in the extensive day-to-day work of maintaining this infrastructure, our engineers often need to take part of the backbone offline for maintenance, perhaps repairing a fiber line, adding more capacity, or updating the software on the router itself. This was the source of yesterday's outage. During one of these routine maintenance jobs, a command was issued with the intention to assess the availability of backbone capacity, which unintentionally took down all the connections in our backbone network, effectively disconnecting Facebook data centers globally. Our systems are designed to audit commands like these to prevent mistakes like this, but a bug in that audit tool prevented it from properly stopping the command. There you go. From the horse's mouth. So the next big story today is actually also somewhat related. Telegram, which is a messaging app, which recently reported passing 1 billion total downloads, says it added 70 million users, near 7% of users on Monday alone, amid the outage of Facebook's products. Makes perfect sense. People need to communicate. And the Washington Post has a headline that says WhatsApp's popularity in the developing world made its outage more acute, impacting services in Lebanon, India, Brazil, and Mexico communities. Absolutely. In India, very notably, my God, is everything done on WhatsApp in India? And a lot of developing countries use WhatsApp for a lot of things. Next one from TechCrunch says there's a report that for at least a couple of years, Amazon has worked on a refrigerator that can monitor usage and suggest products and recipes, investing $50 million a year into the effort. Amazon's repeatedly aiming to bring some of the tech it uses at cashierless Amazon Go stores to your kitchen. So your smart refrigerator can order missing items for you on your behalf.
I actually worked on a project like this for Thermo Fisher. They wanted to do antibody vial tracking, because the antibodies are so expensive and the researchers don't know what they have. They treat it like cooks in the kitchen. They don't know if they have this antibody, that antibody. So their biggest fear is to set up an experiment and not have the material. And so they'll just order, and then they end up with a fridge full of these things. So that's kind of cool that the technology's finally gotten there. We had determined that we were going to use RFID, and it was just it wasn't really feasible to do much spatial location. We were trying to spatially locate as well.
So it says the team behind the Amazon Go systems is said to be heading the change on the project, or the charge on the project, which has been in the works for at least 2 years. The just walk out tech, where they can see what's in your shopping cart as you walk out, would also be used inside your refrigerator, essentially. Members of the Amazon Fresh hardware teams are reportedly involved in the fridge project too. The fridge would monitor the items inside and keep tabs on your purchasing habits, according to the report. If you run low on something you buy frequently, the fridge would notify you and make it easier to order more from Whole Foods or Amazon Fresh, which could give the company's grocery division a boost. The fridge could offer recipe suggestions too, which may prove useful if you forget about an item that's about to expire. Amazon wouldn't make the fridges itself, obviously. It's looking to team up with appliance manufacturer. That's a possibility that Alexa voice control could be included, obviously. That's said to not be a major concern, but given Amazon's propensity for stuffing Alexa into nearly every other type of product, including home robots and its own TVs, it wouldn't be a surprise if the fridge has voice assistant support. Obviously, that's a tiny chip, costs nothing to put in. It's a little speaker and a little chip. Of course they would include it. The company has reportedly spent upwards of $50 million per year on the project. Even so, there's no guarantee that the fridge will come to market, as it's possible Amazon will shelve the plans. If the fridge does come to market, it likely won't come cheap. An Amazon spokesperson told Engadget the company doesn't comment on rumors or speculation. The concept isn't entirely new. In 2016, Samsung revealed a fridge that could help you keep track of what's inside without having to open the door. Who would buy the Amazon smart fridge?
If the tech,
Food and bev, it'd be great for the restaurant industry.
yep, 86ing stuff,
Deli, all of it.
you'd know it if it was 86. And then the temple of knowledge that you bring to us, Tyler, is, as I think of it, you would want to API this, Amazon. You would want to come up with a grocery back end and sell it to all the delivery services and power the back end of cold storage.
Or insurance companies, or health insurance companies.
I wonder if you could make a camera system, a small cameras are getting very cheap, and they don't need to be super high quality, HD, etc., because there's no real motion going on inside your refrigerator. If there would be what is the cheapest camera system that you could add cute little adhesive cameras to the inside of your refrigerator door to track your inventory.
Let's talk offline, Tyler.
Yeah, because then all you're really doing is writing an algorithm of image detection, which there's plenty of APIs precisely for that already. So you got cheap cameras, you have the APIs for the image recognition, object detection, and an inventory system that then sends you notifications. This is $50 million a year you're spending on this, Amazon?
It's
Yeah,
a Raspberry Pi with a couple of $20 camera modules. That's it. You're done.
yeah, exactly.
And some
And
Using
that's
APIs,
OpenCV
object
as the engine.
detection APIs.
That's
So,
why the Amazon approach with their stores is unfortunately asinine. I don't mean to be rude about it, but it just, I alluded to this very early when I started joining the room, but people that shoplift, they know the angles. Their sleight of hand is fast, and there's obscuring and there's blocking, and you get in the way of lines of sight, and this is all predicated on an honest society, and I know we're not talking about a fridge getting robbed, but like, I just think they go overkill. Like, it's one of those, like, my only tool is a hammer, so every problem's a nail.
okay, next up, Google announces the Pixel 6 virtual launch event will be held October 19th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So it starts right as Tech News Around the World. We wrap up our headlines, and then we'll jump right into their Pixel 6 virtual launch event on October 19th. We will put it on the calendar. This is their version of the iPhone, and no doubt they're going to highlight features that the iPhone doesn't have because they have stronger AI than Apple has. They have a stronger AI team over at Google than Apple has. And that allows them to do some interesting features that the iPhone will not be able to do, perhaps this year more than any previously. And that's what we'll be honing in on in that event. It'll be very interesting to see what they cook up there. Apple's latest AirPods Pros and AirPods Max firmware update adds Find My feature support. Earlier today, we reported the new firmware versions are gradually rolling out for Apple's wireless headphones products. This new software enables Find My support for AirPods Pros. Thank God. Holy Jesus, sweet, sweet lordy. Thank you, Apple. Love that. I can find my AirPod Pros now whenever, as I'm prone to losing those things. Next up, Wall Street Journal says they have sources that Visa plans to trim the fees that banks pay Apple for recurring automated payments next year amid discontent in the banking industry. Apple opposes the changes, of course, because it's less money in their pocket. Banks are nudging Visa to change the way it processes some of Apple Pay's transactions, according to people familiar with the matter. Banks rushed to work with Apple Pay mobile wallet when it was debuted in 2014. They have some regrets. When Apple Pay launched, the tech giant got big banks, including JP Morgan, Capital One, and Bank of America, to agree to pay fees that would allow their card holders to pay by iPhone. But some banks have grown unhappy with the costs, especially after Apple introduced its own new credit card in 2019, the Apple Card, in a partnership with Goldman Sachs, which I got one. Did everyone else get one? Anyway, by the way, we have the luxury of having Aaron on stage here, who's going to impress us all with his depth of knowledge in this area here in a second. But some banks are pushing back, nudging card network Visa to change the way it processes certain Apple Pay transactions, according to some of the people. The change would trim the fees that the banks pay to Apple. Visa plans to implement the change next year, according to people familiar with the matter and a document viewed by the Wall Street Journal. Apple executives have told Visa executives they oppose the change, the people said. The two companies are in discussions, and it is possible the planned change won't kick in. Currently, banks pay Apple a fee when their cardholders use Apple Pay. Under the planned new process, the fees wouldn't apply on automatic recurring payments such as gym memberships and streaming services. The dispute reflects a long-running tension between the giants of tech and finance. Companies such as Apple and Amazon have been expanding in consumer payments for years. The banks have often rushed into deals with them, afraid of being left behind, but the deals don't always work out. Google, for instance, is abandoning plans to pitch bank accounts to users. Apple said in a statement that our banking partners are an important part of Apple Pay's growth. Well, yes, this is going to be really interesting to see how this shakes out. Apple Pay is still dependent on this, but we will defer to Aaron for the God's truth on this issue here in a second. Our bank partners continue to see benefits of providing Apple Pay and invest in new ways to implement and promote Apple Pay to their customers for secure and private in-store and online purchases. Major networks, including Visa and MasterCard, are the effective gateways between banks and Apple Pay because they help banks' cards get loaded onto the mobile wallet. The change would apply to Visa-branded cards, though other networks could follow suit. Mobile wallets are smartphone apps on which people can load their debit or credit card credentials and use their phone rather than a tangible card to make payments. The transactions are charged to the shopper's card. Okay, Mr. Aaron Smith.
Hey, Tyler.
Can you help us understand a little more additional context between the banks and Visa and MasterCard and Apple Pay? And it sounds like the banks don't want to pay the fees for the recurring monthly charges, which makes sense because why does Apple need to take a cut each time when it's already a transaction that's already kind of or a relationship that's in motion? Maybe they could charge on the first instance and not on the recurring monthly instances. And the article did mention, and I know this to be true, that the banks kind of shit themselves when Apple announced their own competing Apple Card, which I'm sure I don't believe is it a MasterCard? It is MasterCard that partnered with the Apple Card, yes?
It is, yeah. JP Morgan issued it, yeah.
So what's really going on here? It's just the banks don't like these fees on these monthly recurring charges through Apple Pay?
Yeah, so it stems back to 2012 when Apple came to MasterCard and Visa. They came to say, we want to issue, a digital payment service. And MasterCard and Visa both knew then that this was the start of the downfall of just a card network that had originally connected banks to retailers, so issuers to acquirers. And what you've got now is you've got the big tech coming in, and Apple, Google, Samsung had been working on this for years. And they've kind of said, we want to use the card rail to basically make the payment. Now, there was nothing stopping them making their own rail.
Right.
The thing that was stopping them was cards being accepted in stores, right? So online's easy, right? Online's like you work with Stripe, you work with Adyen, Magenta, you can get a digital basket checkout. PayPal does that. But in store is where MasterCard and Visa had the power because they had connected all the point of sales to the retailers.
Yep.
And so the issue we knew at the time when we were signing this at MasterCard was that it wouldn't take long for Apple to start putting the pressure on a volume of, more people are using my card or my payment service than the bank's payment service. And so that was always coming down the line. And the other aspect of this is we're talking about a card rail. There is also non-card rail. There's the bank rails. There's SWIFT. There's ISO 20022. So these other rails allow a transaction to happen directly from an account rather than a card. And that's where this comes into this recurring payment. The banks consider this a bank payment, not a card payment. Typically, card payments are sporadic, everyday payments of any type. When it becomes like a direct debit or a direct deposit or something that's recurring as a fee, the banks consider that a recurrent bank payment rather than a card payment. And that's where the direct issue lies. We're now talking bank versus card.
Mm-hmm.
So the opportunity for Apple here is to walk away from card.
Right.
And, in Europe, they've got open banking. In the US, it's starting to come to the fore. You see Plaid and the rest are bringing open banking to the US. It's, Vocalink, who MasterCard own, already do bank payments. So soon, and there are companies in Europe, there's a company called Kevin in Central Europe that are already trying to bypass the card network at point of sale, where they're trying to make direct payments from the account to the point of sale. So removing the card network altogether.
Yeah, the article says when Apple introduced Apple Pay in 2014, the iPhone had already clobbered music players, cameras, and GPS systems. Banks and card networks worried it would displace card payments. As you just said, banks agreed to pay Apple 0.15% of each purchase made by their card holders. They pay a separate fee on the debit card transactions. Those fees account for most of the revenue that Apple makes from its digital wallet, according to people familiar with the matter. The terms had the potential to be uniquely lucrative for Apple. Banks don't pay fees to Google for its wallet. And Visa and MasterCard also agreed to give, Anyway, how do you think this will play out a year or 2 or 3 from now?
Yeah, this is so this was always going to play out from the start as being, it was going to be tense at some point, depending how long that took. So the 15 basis points were agreed from the start. There were a few banks that refused to pay it, and those few banks typically had big power in their region. So Barclays in the UK, Commonwealth Bank of Australia, CBA in Australia, they held out for years paying this, because for exactly that. They're like, we already have interchange rates on card issued. Why are we paying this big tech more for the same card payment? And it was always going to come that tension would arise when Apple would say, right, we're going to get more involved in these payments. We want more money out of this because there's a way that MasterCard and Visa are eating up. And so from that side of it, they were always going to ask for more of the pie. And where I see it happening in a year or two is we're going to get to the point where Apple are going to decide, do they really need MasterCard and
Right.
Visa card rails, or could they do a different rail for payments?
Right. And they might develop something or acquire something.
I think they very much will. I was contacted by Apple for a secret project last year, and there's a very big possibility that they're building out exactly that, which is an account transaction. I don't think my children, who are going to be Gen Alphas, I don't think my children will understand a bank account. I think they'll have an account, and that account might be with Apple, it might be with Facebook, it might be with anybody else. It's just an account where their funds sit, and those funds might be fiat, they might be crypto, whatever, but there won't be a bank account that my children know growing up with.
Okay, next one. Report claims Apple's health team has faced several internal issues and high-level departures. Apple says the report is based on inaccurate information. And this is incredibly relevant for particularly to Americans, where we have a rather inefficient healthcare system. And you have these big tech companies, namely Amazon, Google, and Apple, kind of licking their chops over this trillion-dollar market of health and healthcare. And Apple has a whole lot of sensors. They're a hardware company, and these sensors could play an incredibly important role in providing a whole lot of critical data that can be used as an amazing weapon in this battle for the future of healthcare. Because Apple could know, as they already do. And by the way, in this article, I'm tweeting it out now, they show, interestingly, an Apple Watch where it's telling the user their blood oxygen level right on the face of the watch. And this is expected to be coming very soon. And a whole lot of other things are expected to be coming very soon to the Apple Watch, like your blood glucose level. And holy cow, would that change diabetes?
The big game changer, I think, in 7 is going to be the real time end-to-end blood pressure monitoring. Like, people haven't been able to really do that ever.
Yeah, so if you could do blood pressure, blood oxygen levels, real-time glucose monitoring, all built into the Apple Watch, what's amazing about that is that data is so valuable that you might have your employer giving you the device and maybe even mandating that you wear the device. If, as we have vaccine mandates now with employers, this data is so incredibly juicy.
See Livongo.
That it would give Apple an asymmetrical advantage in the, just like, smart cars could know more about you and your driving habits and provide insurance for you in a more accurate, having all of that data. And Tesla is likely to become a insurance company for their own cars because they have so much data about your driving that they could give you far better insurance than anyone else can because they have the data. The data gives you an unfair advantage. And this is why I'm pointing out that this headline that Apple responds to a report saying that the company's health team has faced several internal challenges. Apple's CEO Tim Cook has previously stated that Apple's greatest contribution to mankind will be related to health.
So,
Yes.
okay.
I just wanted to quickly share something. It's very interesting what you said about diabetes, because I do know that a gentleman friend of mine, my friend's father was the CIO of Philips Healthcare Innovation, and his daughter, who's my friend, has T1D, type 1 diabetes. She's under 32, and his mission entirely working for Philips has been to innovate around finding a way for her to live a better life with T1D, right? Of course, she has it. She's born with it, but her insulin and all that comes with the recording of someone that has T1D diabetes, it would be really fascinating to see who Apple chooses as their medical partner, because Philips has always been very innovative in that space, and I'm quite curious to see who they would choose as a potential medical partner to build out deeper medical equipment, because the medical equipment that I've understood to be like some of the state-of-the-art is coming from Philips. And that's why I would really be curious whether or not, and maybe they already have, maybe Apple has already been in conversations with Philips. I'm just very curious what they could put out that would also help his daughter, because that was always his mission.
Okay, so this says there's a new report that the company's health team has faced internal issues and a series of high-level departures, which is based on conversations with 11 current and former Apple employees, and the review of dozens of documents claims that Apple's health team has faced organizational problems that have left the group, quote unquote, without clear direction and struggling to mesh Apple's hardware-oriented culture with the practices of the medical business. Indeed, that's a monumental challenge. The efficiencies of tech trying to address the inefficiencies of the medical business is going to be a real culture clash for the geeks to deal with.
I'm telling you guys, it's not easy. I've had to become I'm pure hardware, but I've had to become an expert in healthcare and understand how dysfunctional it is. And it's I'm not saying throw it up, but it takes a lot of studying.
Right, because these geeks who work at Apple love efficiency, and they have a very clear way of thinking, linear type problem solving, and they're going to jump into the world of the medical business, which is going to overwhelm them in its arcane kind of illogicalness, and it might overwhelm them. And this is going to be the challenge of all challenges. It might be even easier to land on the fucking moon, because at least that has clear physics and logic as an approach, as challenging as it might be. But for geeks trying to deal with medical folks who are in many ways the antithesis of geeks, it's going to drive them cuckoo crazy, and you are likely to see a lot of these geeks throw their hands up in the air and say, I can't do this. So it says some of the employees cited in the report said colleagues faced negative treatment after raising concerns, while some employees expressed concerns about inaccurate information reaching Apple's senior leadership, including Apple CEO Jeff Williams, who oversees both the Apple Watch and the company's broader health initiatives. In the statement, Apple said many of the assertions in the story are based on incomplete, outdated, and inaccurate information, adding that any and all allegations of retaliatory behavior are investigated thoroughly and handled with appropriate corrective actions. Insider's report provides more details about specific allegations within Apple's health team. So I'm going to go ahead and here's the actual report from Insider. The headline says, inside the turmoil at Apple's healthcare organization, Apple's venture into healthcare is struggling with deep organizational issues. Patient advocates are banding together to reshape hospital software. Scientists are working to develop vaccines to protect against multiple coronaviruses. If you're Apple, the most valuable company, has ambitions to create a lasting legacy in healthcare. The goal has been held back by a string of departures and internal issues. Employees say the culture punishes those with concerns and leads to misrepresentation of progress. A growing group of advocates is starting to share the drawing support from patients eager to access and share their own medical records. Some have pushed back, saying patients shouldn't see sensitive information without medical guidance. Scientists, yeah, so there we go. I'm tweeting that one out now to the Tech News Twitter account. And then we'll get into the next one here, which is...
Tyler?
Yep.
Before you move on, there's something that you just said there that's really important. You said about people getting this information without proper medical guidance. There's a huge Pandora's box in that.
Yeah.
Because with the mental health and the conditions that are experiencing in the United States and just worldwide, Could you imagine the impact if someone gets this device and they don't know how to read the information properly because they're not a medical professional? That would be the impact of like the complexity of how this can be executed, because you could have these devices, but if the people wearing them, these wearables, don't understand what they're reading and understand the interoperability and the bioindividuality of their own particular case, they need to have a medical professional or someone that has the expertise in that area to at least counsel with. And I think that's where it gets really tricky, because now you're sort of cutting off your nose to spite your face in some ways, because you're giving these devices, whether you have an Oura Ring or a watch, the software is going to do something that's going to provide you with some sort of indication on your glucose or whatever. And now you could be a hypochondriac. And then what kind of impact does it have on the consumer / healthcare person, the person who's going to receive that healthcare from that device that gives them what's expected to be said? Like, you need a doctor, you need someone that has an expertise in the field to at least interpret what's there, or at least make it connected to some sort of a doctor or a hospice or nursing service that allows them to have an instantaneous feedback loop if they see a concern in what the device gives them as a reading.
I think that's where it's heading
Mike's
to.
too low.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I think that's where it's heading to. I think the main purpose of this tech is for it to connect to the more viable sources like the doctors and the healthcares. I do believe this is definitely a big game changer, and it will definitely. I think it's definitely going to reduce the numbers that you see at the hospital as well. Yeah, because now you've got Teledoc, and over here in the UK, when you make appointments to see the GPs, you don't even have to go in anymore. You can just call up, and everything's just discussed over the phone. So with this tech, it will definitely it will definitely be a big game changer. So instead of going in physically and getting your blood pressure checked, this device will definitely will send readings to the doctors. This is if it goes mainstream, that is.
The regulatory bodies have a distinction between monitoring and diagnosis, and that's very important in this situation. So, the monitoring can inform the diagnosis, but if you go for a full-fledged diagnosis, that's a much higher bar to cross. So, I think it's going to be a great monitoring tool. But I think any diagnosis would have to come from medical professionals in order to handle some of the ethical issues that Amy and others have discussed. But I'll just be very blunt. This is not my lane. I'd love to hear Dr. Danish's take. I'd love to hear John's take, maybe in the morning.
Yeah. In the other time zone, Donish joins us, and he is a medical professional who's gone deep into tech, has a new tech startup that recently had their A round, and has one foot in each world in a really unique way. So we will bring that issue up again when we meet again about 6.5 hours from now. The next headline is that Instagram is ditching the Instagram TV brand, IGTV, and combines IGTV's longer form videos with Instagram feed videos into a new Instagram video format. Reels is unaffected. Instagram head Adam Mosseri recently said they were no longer a photo sharing app, noting the company was prioritizing a shift to essentially video to compete with TikTok in some sense. Was prioritizing a shift into video and significant competition from TikTok and YouTube. Today, Instagram is taking another step towards its larger goal of making video a more central part of Instagram's experience. With the news, it will now combine IGTV's long-form video and Instagram feed videos into a new format simply called Instagram Video. These videos, both longer and shorter, will be found on users' profiles in the new Video tab. Meanwhile, when people encounter videos on Instagram, they will be able to tap anywhere on the video to enter into a full screen viewing mode. After watching, they can then choose to keep scrolling to discover more video content from creators or tap the back button to exit. None of these changes will impact what Instagram is doing with Reels, though. The company's short-form video platform and TikTok rival will continue to remain separate, we're told. They won't be mixed into the feed of videos if users choose to scroll. Okay. There you go. Next up is a review of the now released Windows 11. And The Verge says that the improved modern UI and sounds, but many promises featured like Android apps are missing. And Windows did say a week or two ago that, yes, we did say that Android apps will be coming to Windows, but they've delayed it, and but they expect it, I guess, by the end of the year. But it's not coming out during the release, which it just got released. So the next one is that Twitter is shutting down Scroll in about 30 days. Will roll the ad-free subscription web service into Twitter Blue subscription. And Twitter Blue is their new paid subscription service, which will include removing ads. So Scroll won't be available as an independent service anymore. Scroll's ad-free subscription web service is shutting down as an independent entity in approximately 30 days. The company announced in an email to subscribers the service, which was purchased by Twitter earlier this year, will instead be rolled into the burgeoning Twitter Blue premium subscription as ad-free articles. So this is quite interesting. People really liked Scroll. It was a way to pay a simple $5 per month to remove ads from a lot of websites like The Atlantic and BuzzFeed and USA Today and Vox and others who had partnered with this. So you pay a flat $5 a month and it removes all the ads. And what what Twitter's doing, which is quite brilliant, is they're adding that feature, the ad removal of these articles. This is quite genius. Watch what happens here. So they acquired Scroll, a little startup, who come up with this clever way to remove ads on websites, where you just pay Scroll $5 a month, and then they distribute that money to their partners, like The Atlantic and The Verge and BuzzFeed and USA Today and Vox and etc. And now you don't have ads, which is great. And what Twitter's doing is they're integrating this into Twitter. What do they call it? What's the name of Twitter's new subscription thing? Twitter Blue. So when you are a Twitter Blue user, you pay Twitter $5 a month. I think that's the price of Twitter Blue. And with Twitter Blue, you get a whole bunch of new features, like the ability to save tweets into a clever saving system where you have different pockets that you can save your different tweets into different, you have your work. It's almost like saving bookmarks, like your browser bookmarks can be saved in different files and folders. You'll now be able to save tweets in a similar way. And as part of Twitter Blue, you're now going to have this ad-free service so that when you're using Twitter and you click on articles, when you open those articles, there will be no ads. It'll be text. So it's quite an interesting bundling of Scroll into Twitter Blue, their premium service. So there you go. And so Twitter Blue is only available in Australia and Canada for $3 per month, essentially. There we go. So it will live on, but as part of Twitter Blue, their paid version of Twitter, which they'll continue to push and add more features and products into Twitter Blue for those who want to pay for Twitter. Okay, so the next one is from CNBC, that a social network for retail traders, which means people who buy and sell stocks, individuals, your friends and coworkers who buy and sell stocks, those are called retail traders. And now they have their own new social network called Common Stock. And Common Stock requires them to link their brokerage account wherever they're trading, like their Ameritrader account or their E-Trade account or their Robinhood account, before posting about their investments, so that the social network, Common Stock, can see what you're actually really trading. So you can verify. This is really clever. Holy shit, is this clever. So now you have a social network for traders who want to discuss trading all day, which, by the way, you see this in Clubhouse. Some of the more popular rooms in Clubhouse are the pre-market opening room where people talk about, what they're going to trade that day. And now they can prove what they're trading. And by the way, we do it here where I remind every time I read an article about a firm or Shopify, I mention I'm a shareholder of this. And it was actually, when when I made the purchases was revealed in real time in this room when we were watching the Shopify live stream annual event. And I said, oh, I'm making a share purchase right now. And I did it publicly in the room live. And so, but I can't really prove it unless I take a screenshot of my Robinhood account and do a PTR. And people are doing this to prove that they are, doing what they're saying they're doing. But I love the idea of a social network for traders that taps into their trading accounts so they can have the receipts and show I made this purchase on this day and I sold out this time and I sold on this. And you could have this group mind with receipts to show that people aren't, hyping and pumping and dumping, that they're really what they're really doing, and add some transparency to the whole process,
Hey,
regardless.
Tyler,
Yeah.
as somebody who's done this
Yeah.
professionally, I think this whole idea, forget about the common stock thing, the whole thing that even people do on Clubhouse, and I've participated in some of these stock rooms, but I shy away from specific recommendations because it's crazy to tell people what you're doing. I mean, when I'm running money, it's like I don't want someone front running me.
Right.
So why would I want to tell the whole world what I'm going to do before
You
before
don't. You want to tell them
the
after.
whole
Yeah.
even so yeah, it's right, and then yeah, you're right, and then it's you just do what you want to do, and then unless someone's a client, okay, then they have a right to know what you're doing if you're running money for people. Otherwise, just keep your mouth shut. I mean, I just don't understand all this stuff. I really don't. But
Yeah, but to the retail owner, I mean, we got to think of. I get you professional investors and everything like that, but you do have. I mean, you got tens of millions of people who are trying to improve themselves. Their money's not going anywhere in the bank, and people like to chase where the money is. And if this gives a group comfort in seeing those who are talking about something actually doing it, it might make them feel good about it. But
I don't.
that's
The
also
reason I participate in these rooms is educational, but they need to know it's not about like picking. It's not about picking the hot stock. It's about like understanding what you should look at, how to read a 10K, how to read a 10Q, how to read a balance sheet, how to read a cash flow statement. None of them know how to do anything like that. They think it's like I bet on the Chicago Bears. It's they're winning. I mean this is literally where we are. Okay, and so I think we're in terms of education on investments. I think that this whole idea of the stock of the day is a terrible way to it's not even education. It's no different than picking a sports team. I mean, so that's my.
we're a gambling society, free speech, free choice. They just own their outcome. But you know what? That's just the way it is. And these platforms give them an opportunity. If they can gain something out of it, so be it.
Okay. Next up is
Tyler, can I
yes.
just put just a little bit of color on that?
Sure.
So, full transparency, I work at Fidelity Investments. For those in Europe who don't know, look them out. They're a big company in the US. And
To put it mildly, yeah.
listen, my role, and again, I'm just being transparent here. I'm not promoting or taking away from stock trading. My role at Fidelity is to head up innovation ecosystem. So we experiment with what's happening in the future, and there's a big part of that is in research, and there's a big concern. There's a big concern right from the top of the house for us about Ken's point around gamifying stock trading and getting very close to that line of gambling. There's certainly a role that the companies have to play, Robinhood and the likes thereof, around education, and yes, there's a role about making it simpler. But this younger generation, what we're seeing is very much a generational thing. The younger generation are seeing an older generation who have
being successful in either business or property or investments or whatever, and they're striving for more, and their anxiety is higher. And so there's a lot of behavioral research gone into this where, you know, if we're putting more simplified processes, if we're making it easier to gamble, then we're just fueling the fire of anxiety on all this. And so there's certainly a role that we all have to play around educating what investments are, why they're long term, why you should understand, you know, a Warren Buffett strategy versus an influencer on TikTok. And I think it's when we get to that level of transparency that will help the younger generation. But the more we hide it away and the more we just make it easier to just bet on stocks, the more we're just promoting gambling.
You know, CNBC tonight, at least on the West Coast, I mean, in fact, I think throughout the United States, CNBC tonight ran an entire program on basically gamification. And in that program, by the way, they basically linked the gambling on the stock apps to basically the gambling on sports. Like basically they lumped it in all together and said it's all basically one thing. You know, to the point that we've become society of gamblers. And as someone who lives in Las Vegas and has been in the gambling industry, I don't have an issue with gambling. I mean, that's one thing. I mean, but you know, the stocks shouldn't be gambling, or you know, for most people. And there are things in the financial markets that, quite frankly, generally are gambling. I mean, when you're dealing with futures and options, and you know, I mean that is a little bit more like gambling. But you know, we're not educating anybody about, like, you know, investing in companies and looking at growth rates, and you know, and I mean and look, it's been like this for many years. It is the world we live in, unfortunately. But you know, it's it will come to an end. I do not know when, but it's going to come to an ugly end, just like the housing crash came to an ugly end. You know, and this time maybe the Federal Reserve won't be able to have any more, you know, bullets to bail it out. I mean, so we don't
Tyler?
learn.
Tyler?
Yep.
To Ken and Aaron's points, which are pretty solid, and I see where they're both coming from, especially around the education around investment and how to navigate that experience versus gamifying it and losing the nuances of what needs to be learned. On a very sort of, you know, I'm actually going to support what they're saying with an article that came out, and I didn't tweet it out yet, but I will, about the first ever crypto addiction clinic.
Yeah, that's one. That's
I
an
believe
article.
it's in Scotland.
Yeah.
I think it's in Scotland or something. And in fairness to Aaron and Ken, and Ken being in Las Vegas, I think I totally get where he's coming from, especially when people bet on fantasy football and fantasy sports and the gamble mentality. There's a challenge there as well, because there's a very, very influential crypto person who came from a deep background of finance and trading, and he's older than 50, and he can't wrap himself around the understanding of what's happening with NFTs in the marketplace of NFTs. And I believe he can't wrap his mind around it because it is so young. And with the space of the younger generation stepping into this market, especially in the crypto space, I think it's less about sort of becoming like the parent and saying you're doing it wrong, but more like what Aaron's saying about innovation and research and how he projected how his kids would look at some of this stuff in about 15 years. I think we have to add water to the wine and marry the two instead of making these young adults feel shamed and blamed for being innovative and going to learn, because the reality is no one's giving them that education. The education's, I was just talking about this morning with two of my clients. The education's super expensive. It's really challenging to get in, and it isn't inclusive for all parts of society. So at what point does it make the person feel like, well, I'm not good enough to even study that, so why bother? But what if there is someone that wants to study it, but they just can't get the grades to get in right away? They're a different type of learner. They don't have the accessibility to the schools. They're not allowed in because it's a boys' network, a big boys' club. So at what point do we say enough is enough? Maybe we just need to disrupt all of it and reset how education around the space is designed.
Well, but by the way, you don't have to have a formal education to understand financial markets. I mean, you never did, by
For
the way.
trading, for technical analysis and doing charting, I would say you would. I mean, I have an MBA in finance and entrepreneurism, and it took me a lot to wrap myself around EBITDA, balance sheet, cash flow, understanding how to value a company. That is not something that I was ever exposed to in my entire educational path in the United States, inclusive of my career, because it isn't something that's transparent. It's always very opaque to what position you hold in the company. So at the end of the day, I would probably respectfully disagree that those
but
are
there's
things that
video
everyone
courses
has.
now. You don't have to go get an MBA. There's video courses
True,
on
but video
site.
courses, that's correct, Ken. But video courses, as an adjunct professor myself, there's 7 types of learners. And a video course won't be for every type of learner. It might be for a percentage of them, but not all of them. And unfortunately, as a minority myself, I don't always learn by watching videos. Sometimes I learn by getting into the tech and breaking apart a hardware and building it back up. So I'm a different type of learner. So if we recognize that everyone is an individual and they learn differently, we have to do better by the educational programs that are out there, not just because the sad reality, Ken, is that they're going to YouTube. They're doing exactly what you said. They're going to YouTube. They're going to the videos. But would you rather them go to these videos of people like aping into stocks of the day, or would you rather see them go to videos that are palatable and manageable enough and digestible enough for people to understand and wrap their heads around the concepts? That would be my question.
Okay, next up here is online course provider Udemy files for an IPO, which is e-education, which is going to continue to boom for the foreseeable future. And here's a big one. China's top court ruled in September that a consumer's antitrust suit against Apple can proceed to Shanghai court, a move that some say may bring more lawsuits. And oh boy, here it is. Watch this from South China Morning Post. How Apple's loss of a small legal battle in China might spell big trouble down the road for U.S. tech giant. Supreme People's Court in China ruled that the lawsuit filed by a Chinese consumer against Apple's China entity on antitrust grounds can proceed to the Shanghai court. Apple's plea that its China entity, which mainly distributes products in China, should not be sued over issues related to App Store operations, was rejected. The case involves Jin Shin, who is demanding Apple stop charging 30% commission on purchases in the China App Store. Told you. It started, it's spreading. It went to Korea. Here it comes to China. And so the case of the consumers demanding Apple stop charging 30% commission on purchases in the China App Store and to allow Chinese consumers to make payments through wallets other than Apple Pay, to provide 100,000 yuan or $15,000 in compensation and to issue a public apology. The Shanghai Intellectual Property Court has yet to make a ruling over whether the person's demands should be met, but the decision by China's top court to allow the lawsuit to be considered by the Shanghai court could signal more trouble ahead for Apple in China, which now accounts for a fifth of its iPhone sales. Jin's attorney told the South China Morning Post in a telephone interview that a hearing is expected to take place in Shanghai next January. This is a case where Chinese consumers are standing up for their rights against an international business giant, says Wang, who is also the co-founder of a law firm. He said the case will serve as a milestone for Chinese consumers to demand better protection from big companies like Apple. Apple declined to comment. Jin filed the lawsuit against Apple in February after he came to the decision that Apple was potentially abusing its market dominance by charging an Apple tax on apps and was excluding other payment services such as Alipay and WeChat Pay, both of which are widely used in China. Alipay is affiliated with Alibaba, the owner of the South China Morning Post. Apple has for many years taken 30% commission from all in-app purchases downloaded from its app store. In response to mounting global scrutiny in recent months, it has lowered the fee this year to 15% for developers who produce less than $1 million in annual revenue. In June, Apple announced that the App Store ecosystem produced $643 billion in sales in 2020. China accounted for 47% of this. Holy shit. So Apple's essentially half of all of the sales in the App Store. My God. And they might lose this. Apple has prided itself on having a closed, secure ecosystem, but legal pressure from consumers and peers is now leading to cracks in Apple's walled garden. In August, South Korea's parliament approved a bill that bans App Store operators, including Apple and Google, from forcing software developers to use their payment systems, effectively prohibiting them from charging commissions on in-app purchases. Last month, a landmark case between Apple in the US concerning similar issues connected to Apple's platform commissions and closed payment systems came to a close with Apple deemed to have engaged in anti-competitive conduct. The tech giant was allowed to keep its payment system, though. In its ruling, in this lawsuit, Jin alleges that the prices of the in-app services offered by apps in Apple's App Store, including video apps and podcasting apps and music apps, are higher than in Android's app stores, possibly as a result of Apple's 30% App Store commission. The Jin also cites China's anti-monopoly law in accusing Apple of anti-competitive practice. A senior partner at a Shanghai law firm said that the top court's ruling could have far-reaching impact. Here's the quote. I think this case has established a new principle, namely that antitrust cases are also rights infringement cases and thus can be adjudicated by local courts. So this means that the victims in antitrust cases, for example, the competitors of the monopolistic company or consumers, may very likely go to their local court for legal actions. Oh boy. That's half of Apple, half of the $600 billion a year that they make in their App Store sales. Wow. Holy cow. So the next one is that Snapchat rolls out a new tool aimed at helping young users run for office. Snapchat is rolling out a new Run for Office in-app tool to encourage young adults to run for local political offices. The company says the new Run for Office tool is designed to help young users engage with democracy in an easy way. The goal of the tool is to tackle common barriers that young people face when determining whether they want to get involved in local politics. Powered with information from Ballot Ready, this simple tool will help Snapchatters explore hundreds of opportunities to run for local office based on the issues they care most about, from city neighborhood board to township council to school boards and state representative, the company said in a statement. The tool includes a centralized portal that curates over 75,000 upcoming elections on the federal, state, and local levels that users may be eligible to take part in. Users will be able to identify issues that they are passionate about, so the tool can surface roles that they may be interested in. The new tool also provides access to candidate recruitment organizations and training programs such as Emerge America. And Snapchat users will also be able to nominate their friends to run for office through the tool. Users will be able to share stickers through the tool to start campaigning on Snapchat with their friends. Further, the tool includes a personalized campaign hub that shows users the steps they need to take to get on the ballot. The hub also provides information about filing deadlines and signature requirements. Here's the quote. We know this next generation is the most diverse, yet currently only 6% of state regulators are under the age of 35. We hope our Run for Office initiative will help shape a more equitable and reflective democracy that includes all Americans, including young people. Snapchat says its app reaches 90% of the 13 to 24-year-olds in the U.S., and that it gives it an opportunity to engage young users to become engaged citizens. Any Snapchat user in the U.S. can now access Run for Office by swiping down on the app's camera screen or by searching for a tool within Snapchat. The new tool isn't the first time Snapchat has tried to get users involved in politics. During the U.S. election last year, the company launched a voter-focused initiative aimed at getting users registered to vote. So we can now get social media folks running for offices. And how do we feel about YouTube commenters running for office?
Tyler, I wonder if longer term it will help to get big money out of the election cycles. I mean, so if you have, to your
What
point,
if
if you have people who are influencers that, they don't necessarily, they have not historically relied upon, lots of funding to get their followers, and they have a huge follower base and they're really influential with that base. I'm just really interested to see what could happen in the long term in terms of a power shift, not only in terms of demographics, but in terms of who funnels, who supports who funnels support to people who are running for office.
And Tyler, I know you're, mayor, governor of your own island, but I'd totally vote for you if you're in the United States. And we need even keeled leaders is the point. Like someone that's not going to subscribe to just one view, like someone that's going to be open and dynamic. Like I think, I know it sounds crazy what they're trying, but it's probably actually a good idea, to be honest.
It could result in people's choice. I mean, influencers have real followers, and if they're the ones voting for them, it's people's choice leader. It's a good twist. I agree with Chris.
But might this give people with social media followings, Instagram influencers with millions of followers, might be able to beat out people with less followers? If this is that the
Well, I won't make any comments now, but that's already how it was. I mean, if you looked at the Trump versus Biden, it was like a 6-1.
Well, and I'll even take you back 20 years when Jesse the Bod became Jesse the Gov of Minnesota.
yeah,
And I remember he was hitting those Gopher football games hard every weekend. He was canvassing the campus and he was explicitly targeting, the young vote with these, hideous neon green t-shirts. But yeah, so pre-Insta, people like Jesse knew how to harness kind of the collective power of this generation. So
I like your point. Yeah,
I mean,
Arnold
by the same
Schwarzenegger as
token,
well. Yeah,
absolutely. bingo. I was going to say movie stars, Ronald Reagan, Arnold
yep,
Schwarzenegger. I mean,
yep.
the same thing. The recall in California. One of the things that Arnold said that, hey, on the Republican side, there's no Arnold here, so the Gavin is going to cruise through,
Well,
and he
and
did.
with Jesse,
So
I mean,
same
he shook up the system. I'll say that. I mean,
Yeah.
I was not a Jesse fan, but I was appointed to a position by him. And I remember when I was in his office. I mean, he didn't have any allegiances. I mean, I think that's what President Trump would have claimed as well. But Jesse really he was that guy, and he had the Democrats and the Republicans shaking in their boots because no one knew what this guy was going to do. And so I think to a certain extent, these influencers have potentially the same capacity because they're not beholden to the same groups that have historically held the power in terms of, determining the outcome of elections.
I think this also ties neatly to this Facebook thing, this algorithm thing we've been talking about today and yesterday. The platforms such as Facebook or Instagram or whatever, it's really not just an entertaining tool to connect friends, to rate people how they look. It's really becoming a much bigger part of a society.
Well, it gets really interesting. Sorry to cut you off, Ben, because not only do these social apps like this run for office. Okay, I'm running for office, and then it also can, as the previous campaign did, help people register to vote and vote. Right, so there might be that the people who run for office inside of Snapchat are able to get a whole lot of votes because they get the Snapchat audience. Whoever they're running against isn't in Snapchat, doesn't have that built-in kind of digital audience.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is really it's kind of like money. People always talk about politics as money, but the assumption of money was important or is important in politics is because you can put out these huge ads on the boards by the highway, on television, blah blah blah. Well, nowadays it's really social media. So if you're able to have a huge following, it's almost like you have a built-in large chunk of money, as in currency in the form of followers, if you will.
even on Clubhouse, we're saying, hey, give your love to the speakers, or to Tyler by following him or something like that. So I think this is really kind of like money, but having a huge following.
So how about this
Certainly,
idea?
they could get a lot of votes.
How about I run for office, and my whole platform is every time there's a vote, I will send out a tweet asking all of my backers, and everybody's welcome to do it, and there's no
Do it
filter.
NFT style. Do it NFT style as a DAO.
Well, no.
And
I want to make this real simple. Every single vote that basically your
I'm sorry.
politician has a lot of, they vote. They're constantly voting on your behalf as a representative. What I'm going to do is fully democratize that, and every time I have a vote, I'm going to send out a tweet saying, "Okay, everybody, which way should we vote? Should we yes or no? On this new bill, should we vote yes or for or against?" And then it's a Twitter poll. And okay, everybody, but this is only open to people who have been proven to be part of our jurisdiction, and then everyone votes. And then this is true, the digital
this is
democracy.
the drive for identity. This is what the founders would have killed for this system. They would have designed a
Yeah,
really good system around this, right?
right. So
And
here's my
like
point:
like
is
we
if I now say, okay, we're creating a new party where I'm democratizing the voting of every issue to our constituents, and so you can. I'm not left or right. I'm a full on give the power back to the people through digital democracy. So I will vote however the people want to vote on whatever the issue is. I'm not for or against you or your cause or whatever. I'm just allowing the citizens to have the power back. So,
I think we've done
but
this
hold on,
experiment. It's called
because
Brexit.
yeah, what if I'm one member on this, in this political body, but I then encourage all of my other friends to do the same? And I say, hey, we're creating a party called the Power Back to the People Party. So we're not Republicans or Democrats. We are putting the power back into we're full digital enablers. And so we get the politicians out of the mix, essentially, so that this is an interesting hack to the
it's a
political system.
it's a true representative democracy because you
Right.
can offer multiple tiers of governance from the same person. But it all is it really
Oh,
hinges
but
on identification.
most importantly, I cannot be bought.
Yes.
I cannot be paid by anybody because how I vote on each issue will be known before I actually vote. And then
But
everyone will see in real time how the vote is going amongst their citizens, so they can engage in debate to encourage their friends to vote in this poll.
Before you all think
to
this is a
here,
panacea, let me just point out
Yeah.
that in states like California that have a proposition and referendum feature that allows for direct democracy, the reality what happens is that big companies spend millions of dollars getting ballot propositions on the ballot, or to either get them on the ballot,
Yep.
or they work to defeat them. And so all of a sudden, if you think you're taking out special interest money because you're going to have a direct vote, just go look at California's proposition situation, and it doesn't always work like
No,
that.
that's what this is why what Tyler's proposing is actually brilliant. Because the problem is both parties are beholden to whoever their sponsors are.
No,
Okay,
there's no
back to my
parties,
work.
Chris. You live in California. The proposition stuff has nothing to do with the parties.
It
Someone wants to put a pro and anti tobacco thing.
who generates the bills?
Or no, they they go out and they get signatures to get them on the ballot.
Right.
You don't even need to get the legislature to do it.
There's more. All right, but what I'm
But then they
getting
get
at
voted
is
on.
Right, by the
yeah,
people, influenced by commercials, by special interests.
Well, the special interests pay to get it on the ballot, but then people, yeah, you're right. Then people vote on them. And is the outcome of those propositions exclusively based on the votes of the people?
yeah.
Yes. There's
That's the
the
lawmaking
people. The
process.
people can override the legislature in
Yeah.
states that have this feature,
Mm-hmm.
which are mostly Western states. California's most notable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they could overvote. They could overturn the legislature. I mean, that's what Prop 13 was. I mean, and I'm not saying it's good or bad, but they overturned the legislature. They said property taxes are too high, and they put a cap at property taxes. I mean,
Right.
the people did it on their own.
I'm just eager to see which country, maybe Singapore, as you'll see in the next article I'm about to read, will have. Well, no, it wouldn't be Singapore, but maybe Sweden or somebody with a lot of democracy and a lot of digital know-how will uh, create an app for their citizens with identity verification that just says, "Okay, it's time for everyone to vote again. We have 5 issues this month. Here they are, and we have a week. You have a week to submit your vote."
I'm so happy you're mentioning this particular version because, like, yeah, the risk is that you have an uninformed populace and they're
Yeah,
voting,
but
you
hang
know.
on. I want to address
But
that
this is
because
what this
yeah, we here
it is
it's
what it is.
Monday. Well, happy Monday, everybody. Everyone's got the app. Everyone's digitally identified, verified. Here's we have this vote. You can vote any time before Friday, and you can see in real time how people are voting. And here's the important, you have a week to inform yourself, and the news has a week to educate everybody on these issues, and we can debate this all week long before the final vote deadline of Friday, 5 p.m. And so everyone is encouraged to educate themselves before they vote.
This is what
Okay.
they try though,
Well,
but
Can
it's
I
with the
can I share some
mailers.
reality in Singapore? We do have digital authentication for every citizen and every resident in Singapore.
mm-hmm.
But for voting, the government still want you to go to the polling center to vote because if you're not there, somebody like, for example, your son may be using your ID to actually vote for some other party that they like
Mm-hmm.
and not what you decide to vote on. And voting is supposed to be secret in Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
And
So,
Cheryl, aren't people
yeah.
fined if they do not vote? I seem to remember that one of my Singaporean friends was in a bind because he needed to get to Singapore in order to vote. Otherwise, he would have faced some sort of penalty.
Oh, not really. So basically, in Singapore, voting is supposed to be compulsory. But if you happen not to be in the country when during the voting period, because it was short notice, right? You will actually don't have to vote. But of course, you can also choose to vote in the overseas embassy. But if you are not registered, you don't have to. But after that year, your name will be strike out. Meaning to say that if you don't reinstate your name into the voting system, you will not be able to vote in the future. But yeah, I mean, you're supposed to reinstate after that.
Okay.
And also, if you are falling sick, you need a medical cert in order not to go down to the polling center to vote.
Okay. So the next article is kind of related to the Snapchat political stuff. This is from the Washington Post. Singapore passes most powerful foreign interference law amid fears of ever shrinking space for dissent. Singapore's parliament has passed a law aimed at countering foreign interference that is potentially so powerful, rights groups and legal experts worry it could crush public debate in city-state where authorities are already frequently accused of curbing civil liberties. The law, approved late Monday after a 10-hour session, would allow authorities to compel internet service providers and social media platforms to provide user information, block content, and remove applications used to spread content they deem hostile. So this would give power to the Singapore government to force the social media platforms and the internet service providers to block anything they want to block, any content, any apps, anything. Maybe Snapchat. If there's somebody trying to run for office, shut it down, stop that, knock that off. Groups and
they need to have a valid reason to do that. It's not just anything without any
valid
reason.
according to who, Cheryl?
Well, it has to be convincing.
To who?
To everybody.
No, everybody. It's not everybody doesn't have
It's a
the power.
democracy.
Yeah.
Majority.
No,
Okay.
you've given the power to the authorities. It's up to them if they deem it. What are you? You're implying that you have political resource recourse, which you don't. So you'd have to have an actual revolution to remove them out of power. Groups and
Next election.
Groups and individuals involved in local politics could also be designated politically significant persons, which would require them to disclose foreign funding sources and subject them to other countermeasures. Oh, this gets interesting. Oh my God, I had not thought about this. So in that Snapchat run for office, oh my God, we read a headline, multiple headlines recently, where historically Twitter and Facebook and the social networks were combating the bots, the digital fake accounts on Facebook and Twitter, which Facebook and Twitter say are disproportionately coming from China and Russia. Hundreds of thousands of fake Facebook and Twitter accounts that they've been dealing with this for a decade, and they more or less got it under control. This has now led to a new solution for China and Russia to continue to influence the social media networks. They're now paying actual real accounts, real money, to say misinformation. Okay, now what happens when Russia and China say, oh, why don't you run for office in Snapchat? They have a new feature in Snapchat called Run for Office. We would like to send you $1 million to run for office. How's that sound, Lakeisha? Would you like to run for office? We have $1 million here waiting for you. Why don't you go ahead and run
Sign
for
me up.
office? And we will, and we do this in every city in America. And the point is, there's already strong article publications, strong headlines. And boy, does Russia love to meddle in elections. Oh boy, Germany just accused them of it again last week in the German elections. So Russia already has a rich history of meddling in elections, election interference. What's to stop them from encouraging people to run for offices in this Snapchat app? They already have a history of meddling in social media. They have a history of meddling in elections. This sounds like that Snapchat tool sounds like Putin's dream come true. So Singapore is not having none of that. Singapore already anticipates this. Singapore wants a kill switch on anything they don't like happening on social media. That's what this headline says. Groups and individuals involved in local politics will be called political significant persons, which will require them to disclose foreign funding sources and subject them to other countermeasures to reduce the risk of overseas influence. You get it? Singapore understands that the overseas countries are influencing their politics and using social media to do this. And now they passed this new law on Monday to stop it. Get it? Legal experts say that the law risks capturing legitimate civil activities undertaken by Singaporeans. Officials argue that Singapore, a small and open economy, is especially vulnerable to foreign interference. The country is an important U.S. partner in Southeast Asia, but maintains close cultural and economic ties with China. It is currently detaining at least one Chinese citizen who has admitted to being a Chinese spy. You get it now? Do you see what's going to happen? Do you see what's already happening? Do you see why Singapore is doing this? And do you see what Snapchat's doing? Singapore's powerful Law and Home Office minister told lawmakers that the Foreign Interference Act, it's called FICA, F-I-C-A, was needed to address a serious threat to national security, saying the internet has created a powerful new medium for foreign country subversion of Singapore. He didn't name any countries specifically suspected of engaging in such activities, and a spokesperson for the Home Office Ministry said the law is actor agnostic. So we're not targeting anyone specifically. It just so happens that the one person we've arrested just happens to be a Chinese, and he happens to be a spy. That's a coincidence. Now that right there is just a wild coincidence. But no, this has nothing to do with China whatsoever. At all, not at all. It's all about Canada. We're worried about the Canadians interfering in our Singapore politics.
Yeah, I think they are worried about Tyler Crowley.
We're worried about those Norwegians, Ellen, who have a very long, rich history of meddling in Asian politics and using social media to fuck over countries and cause division.
They do it so well, nobody's detected it.
Nobody even suspected the Norwegians were at this all along. So Singapore putting in new protections in place to prevent other countries from meddling in their politics by using their social media. They've added a kill switch to be able to block anybody, anytime, for any reason.
But it kind of makes sense because if you weaponize social media,
it makes
then
all the
it
sense in the
becomes
fucking world.
then it's like just Department of Defense
But
doing what it's
why?
supposed to do.
How about Singapore do what America does and remove this new law, and better yet, put in a new feature into Facebook that lets anyone run for political office inside of Facebook and get funding from anybody inside of Facebook. And
Well, we don't like gun laws. We're not going to like other.
Can we start referring to this social media attacks as like a digital opium, just to kind of make it clear to how China's treating it is strategically, like
it's digital guns.
Well, it's why I use the word opium is this is how opium was used to get Hong Kong from China, right? Like how did you describe it, Tyler's?
Say it again.
Basically, Tyler basically in a couple weeks ago basically said, China had no answer for the opium crisis, and just capitulated and gave up
they gave
Hong
away
Kong.
Hong Kong, yeah.
And now they get a chance to realize like they can control the algorithms through TikTok. They can control our children's behavior. They can control how we treat each other, and it's overwhelmingly external influences. And I don't want to continue to blame and beat on that, but and so like I like the term digital opium because it really encapsulates the reverse
China
mind
itself
fuck
is
that's
calling
happening.
it digital opium.
Yeah, and because the video games are the digital opium, right?
They said
Like
it
they're
themselves.
pumping video games. They pump
They
video
called it
games to our
spiritual
kids.
opium. Yes.
But I think
Yeah.
if you call it opium, then you want to regulate it. But if you call it weaponry, then it becomes a lot more of a war thing, which in fact it is, because they're waging war with information.
Oh, we love weapons in the U.S.
Well, we're good at it. We have a lot of practice.
Okay, so next article.
Hey, Tyler.
Yes.
Tyler, speaking of Facebook, I just saw an article.
Yeah.
19 of Facebook's top 20 pages for American Christians were managed by Eastern European troll farms in 2019. So if you, according to Relevant magazine, these groups are largely based in Kosovo and Macedonia, and an attempt to target American Christians.
Can you please send me the link?
Provocative content.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my PTR, my profile picture.
Can you please send me the link?
I think the other piece of that is that they targeted African American communities as well. So the article that I read about a week ago, talked about exactly what I think it was Ben that was just speaking, saying about the white evangelical population in the U.S. as well as the African American, the Black community in the United States as well.
Okay, next article from Bloomberg. Behind the crypto broker accused of enabling ransomware hackers. It's called Suex. It is a cryptocurrency exchange or broker that the Biden administration considers a key cog in the recent ransomware epidemic. Is legally registered in the Czech Republic, but doesn't appear to have offices there, Ben. It says it may be operating out of Moscow's tallest skyscraper, despite it not being listed at the address. It earned the distinction last month of being the first crypto exchange to be blacklisted by the U.S. as governments try to stem further attacks. And while it denies any part of the recent spate of cybercrimes, experts say it's a prime example of a shadowy corner of the industry that has allowed hackers to thrive by giving them a means to launder millions of dollars in illicit digital proceeds through nested middlemen to tap larger exchanges to process transactions. Suex A virtual currency exchange, a crypto exchange, basically, is a transactions platform that allows cryptocurrency traders to buy and sell digital coins. It is accused by the US and the FTC and the SEC of mixing legitimate digital currency trades with illegal transfers from ransomware gangs, allowing them to launder profits from the kinds of attacks that have crippled hospitals, businesses, school districts, and even major U.S. fuel pipeline, the Colonial Pipeline. The U.S. Treasury Department alleges that SUEX has played an integral role helping cyber criminals and hackers clean and cash out their loot, mostly Bitcoin paid by ransomware victims, before converting it to traditional currency. So please make note that these large U.S. institutions have said that SUEX is a critical piece in the whole ransomware attacks, including the Colonial Pipeline, because the Colonial Pipeline hackers, it turns out, who are Russians, who very interestingly were caught again yesterday. Physically, 2 individuals were caught, right? In the Ukraine. They happen to be Russians. They are Russian hackers who were previously working directly with the Kremlin, who were attacking key American infrastructure, who Biden went over to Geneva, met with Putin, said, knock that shit off, or we're going to cut off your Nord Stream pipeline selling natural gas to Europe, which is most of your money. And so they did. And so the ransomware gangs are evil, disappeared. Their whole website disappeared. And then they reappeared about a month later in Ukraine, as predicted by me here in this room, that would happen. And it did happen. And now they've been caught in the Ukraine. And the point is that you need an exchange to launder the money after you get what's called the loot from your victims, because this is cryptocurrencies that can be tracked. So this cryptocurrency exchange called SUEX is based in Moscow, according to American intelligence. They know it, or they wouldn't be publicly saying it. And yet it's registered in the Czech Republic, right? Because the Russians aren't stupid. They want to show that, no, it's not us. It had nothing to do with us. That company's registered in the Czech Republic. It must be the Czechs. Those sneaky Czechs. They're always, doing all this sneaky infrastructure hacking. The Czechs always doing that hacking. And so that's why I said, Ben, send me the article, because we know goddamn well who's doing that meddling. And it ain't the fucking Macedonians. They can barely get water. Macedonia is one of the poorest countries in the Western world. Right? I mean, they have other things to focus on in Macedonia, I can assure you. So, SUEX is now in the crosshairs, because if we can remove the money laundering mechanism that washes the money and take that out, then it'll be difficult for them to continue to do the ransoms attacks, because you need a safe place to wash the money so that you can use it after the fact. And that's why SUEX is now in the crosshairs, and they're going to do everything they can to take that out. And we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Next one, Udemy files for IPO. We covered that. And congrats to Goggin and the team at Udemy. Nice people over there. So the next one's from this dating app uses your music taste for matches. Power of Music wants to connect people based on their Spotify and Apple Music listening histories. And that's kind of clever, because God knows I don't want to get involved with anyone that has anything to do with Creed or Puddle of Mud or anything like that. Let's just call it like it is. We all have bands that we hate, and we could all save ourselves a whole lot of headache by swiping right on somebody and then finding out, years later, that they're a fan of some really ridiculously terrible music. So that's genius. And then Froz sends in this one from Bloomberg, that Apple accused of bad faith in the Ericsson patent royalty talks. Oh boy, here we go. Because Ericsson owns all the patents for all the innovations around 4G, 5G, 3G, Bluetooth, SMS, and all that shit. And Apple has to pay a lot of royalties. And so what does this say? Ericsson says Apple wants to drive down value of its patents. Ericsson seeks court ruling that its licensing offer is fair. Ericsson which is based in Stockholm, Sweden, filed a lawsuit Monday accusing Apple of engaging in unfair tactics to avoid paying royalties for the use of the baseline 5G telecommunication technology. Ericsson says it's trying to renegotiate a license with Apple and is already encountering obstacles. It wants a federal judge to rule that Ericsson's offer complies with requirements that royalty demands be fair and reasonable. The two companies have been here before. The earlier license was signed in 2015, only after protracted litigation. Then, Ericsson said, Apple filed a surprise suit challenging the validity of 7 Ericsson patents and demanding that Ericsson provide proof of every single patent it claimed was part of an industry standard. Despite receiving substantial revenues from its sales of iPhones and other cellular devices, Apple has historically resisted licensing overtures by Ericsson and other essential patent holders as part of a global strategy to devalue standard essential patents and reduce Apple's royalty payments, Ericsson said in the complaint filed in a federal court in Texas. The dispute is over how much Apple should pay Ericsson for 5G connectivity and networking technology developed by the European Technology Standards Institute. Companies that collaborate to ensure devices are interoperable gain the advantage of ensuring that their inventions are included in any industry standard. As a result, they pledge to license any relevant patents on fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory terms, a phrase that's never been clearly defined and has led to lawsuits and regulatory investigations worldwide. Apple, which reported $232 billion in revenue and $74 billion in net income in the 9 months ending in June 26, has a history of high-stakes litigation as part of licensing negotiations, particularly with companies like Ericsson, Nokia, and Qualcomm that own vast swaths of patents on foundational cellular technology. Ericsson said its publicity announced its royalty rates for 5G technology to handset makers, but Apple has argued that the rate doesn't meet Ericsson's obligations. Apple's allegations of breach threaten Ericsson's reputation and business, the Stockholm-based networking company said in the complaint. Officials with Cupertino, California Apple, didn't immediately respond to queries seeking comment. The case is Ericsson versus Apple, Inc. Ericsson will win this case guaranteed. I will happily take any bets on that one. Matter of fact, I'll give you 2-to-1 odds. So if Apple does win, I will pay you double the amount of our bet. Feel free to DM me your bet amount. So the next one is, and as the article said, Ericsson announces, hey, smartphone manufacturers, we own 5G. We own all the patents for 5G. If you would like to use 5G, here's how much we will charge you equally across the board. Apple is not paying, so they're suing Apple. They will win, no questions asked. That's about as clear of a case as you'll ever see. So the next one is New York City will not enforce restaurant customer data sharing law while DoorDash sues. And this is an interesting development that could have huge domino impacts on this whole food delivery economy that's developing. New York City agreed to hold off on requiring food delivery companies to share customer data with restaurants, the subject of the recent lawsuit by DoorDash. In a joint filing on Monday with the U.S. District Court in Manhattan, the city said it will not enforce a new law requiring the disclosures of customer data from the delivery apps to the restaurants while the lawsuit is pending, and DoorDash withdrew its request for an injunction to block enforcement. DoorDash sued the city of New York on September 15th, calling a requirement that food delivery app companies provide customers' names, phone numbers, and email addresses and delivery addresses to restaurants a shocking and invasive intrusion of consumers' privacy. Great point. Yeah, I think in the EU this would be illegal to do, actually, according to GDPR. The San Francisco-based company also said the law would let restaurants ride free on data they would not demand from in-person diners. Great point. When a customer comes into the restaurant, they don't force you to say what your address is or your phone number. So why are you forcing people ordering digitally to do the same? It's a great point. It exposes the hypocrisy of the whole thing.
There's a larger point, actually, which is that what the city of New York is trying to do here is, take from the delivery companies
Correct.
what's really their proprietary information.
Correct.
that they paid for to create
Correct.
and just give it over to the restaurants. I mean,
Correct.
it's almost like communism or socialism. They're just basically stealing from one private company
Correct.
to give it to another private company. I mean, that's pretty
Digital
much.
communism. That is exactly what it is. It's atrocious, and New York City is clearly, in the pocket of their restaurants. Here's why, though, because New York City collects taxes from those restaurants, not from the apps. Because those apps aren't based in New York City, or they might have a small business there making small, but the companies are based in California.
No, no, no. But before we just assume that, Tyler, because I'm not going to even say that I know the answer, but I'll give you how complicated sales taxes are. Okay, because
Okay, they
the
make sales.
app,
I'm talking, sales
that,
tax, sure.
right,
But
but
the sales
there's
tax is
probably
included
tax
in
on.
the transaction. They're getting that anyways.
I no, no, no. I understand, but there's probably taxes that the delivery companies are paying
Hmm,
because they're operating in the city. They've got nexus to the
yeah,
city, so it's more because the people who own the restaurants live there. They vote, that type of thing. But if there's anything that should be able to be handled through the private sector without the government, it should be this type of thing because like this is not like a necessity. It's not like food you're buying at a grocery. I mean, it's kind of like a privileged situation that you could even afford to pay for a food delivery service, or people don't have money for food at all. And the government should really just stay out of this. There's no reason for the government to get involved in food delivery services. I mean, really, period.
restaurants are screaming help. These delivery platforms are going to get too much power because they've got the data. We were never smart enough to collect the data. They are. These apps have the data. The restaurants don't. And they point that out, right? That the restaurants don't ask for your data when you come into the restaurant. The apps do.
And by the way,
This gives the apps
and there
a
are some
huge
restaurants
advantage.
in New York City that are banding together. By the way, it hasn't got off to a great start yet, but they're banding together to form their own delivery
Great.
service. They're
Now
saying, you know
there
what?
you go. That's how you do it.
There you go. Yeah.
What's stopping you from doing that? What's stopping you from offering delivery? You can compete with the apps. There's nothing stopping you from competing with these apps.
Pizzerias did that. Even forget about Domino's. Pizzerias. Look, growing up in New York, I'm going to tell you, pizzerias and Chinese restaurants used to. When I grew up in New York, they were
The
able to
Wonder
deliver
Years,
food.
man. He drove for Chong's Chinese.
They delivered food on their own. They didn't do it with an app. So it can be done.
Of course, it can be done. They were
So
doing it before the apps. Fucking Domino's built billions, one of the biggest restaurant businesses in America
But I'm saying
on delivery.
even the independent pizza
I
companies,
know.
the independent pizza owners did it. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. And I understand why they're doing it, because a lot of restaurants are going to die because they're unwilling to do delivery.
Ken, you're killing me. You had to bring up New York pizza.
Shout out for Ray's here. So,
Oh, damn it.
anyone up for some Grimaldi's over the Brooklyn Bridge there?
Tyler, how does a
It's
Californian like you know about race?
it's 4:30 here in Atlanta, and they were telling me that if I try to cross the street to go to the convenience store, I might get stabbed. And I'm here at a show where like it's a bunch of paramedics and stuff, so it's kind of ironic.
Okay. So Faraz sends in the next one from Bloomberg's. Wait, did Ken? You're asking me how I know about Ray's Pizza in Manhattan,
Yeah.
dude? I toured as a musician, went to every major city many times. If you want
Oh,
to know
okay.
the
Okay.
best Philly cheesesteak, you want to know the best barbecue down south, you name it, baby. This is the benefits
Tyler
of being a
was
touring
born
musician.
a
Yeah.
rambling man.
I've had some good food, but the first thing I do when I get to any city is find out what the local best thing is. So you get a little slice of all the best eateries across America. I mean, that's what you got. If you're going to be a touring musician, I mean, what else are you going to do? So if you want to know the
Tyler, what did
best,
you, I didn't know that. What did you play?
I'm a guitar. I do guitar. So Amazon's CEO says that video games could become the latest entertainment business. Oh, what a fucking genius this guy is. Look at the big
Sorry.
brain on Amazon CEO saying
they could.
video games could become the latest entertainment business. The early response to the company's game New World, which debuted a week ago, is positive. Amazon had a long struggle to make a good video game. Now that it finally has a hit release, the company is predicting a bright future for that business. Games could end up being the largest entertainment category over the long haul, Andy Jassy, the chief executive officer, said Tuesday at a technology conference. It's a bold pronouncement, is it? For a company with almost a decade of failures in gaming and one that just renewed its commitment to the movie business in the form of an $8.4 billion acquisition of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. A week ago, Amazon released New World, an online computer game where archers and axe wielders colonize a mythical land. Jassy said it's off to a great start and has a couple million active players a day. Interest from gamers and from viewers on Amazon's live stream website Twitch has sustained over the last week, and the first 4 online reviews were generally positive with an average score of 81%, even before Jassy became CEO in July. He oversaw Amazon's effort to break into video games. There were a lot of articles written, people saying things like Amazon knows how to build everything but games. Why can't they build games? Jassy said at the event Tuesday, hosted by Seattle tech news site GeekWire. It takes a few before you find a hit, or several, but they didn't lose their resolve. Amazon released its first major video title back in 2020. Anyway, but then they've now got a hit, and now they're going to continue to take the proceeds from that hit and reinvest it in more games. And yes, video games are likely to become the largest entertainment category. And the next one is that Europol arrests 2 prolific ransomware operators. The duo allegedly targeted more than 100 companies with ransomware schemes, and these were the individuals I was talking about that were just arrested by Europol and with collaboration with the French intelligence. A joint strike involving the FBI, the Ukraine National Police, and the French and Interpol has led to the arrest of 2 prolific ransomware operators known for their extraordinary ransom demands ranging from $5.8 million to $81 million. The agency said the strike led to the search of 7 different properties in Ukraine, the freezing of $1.3 million worth of cryptocurrency, the seizure of $375,000 of cash, as well as 2 luxury cars worth approximately $252,000. Europol doesn't offer many details about the arrested pair. The criminals would deploy malware and steal sensitive data from these companies before encrypting the files. They would then proceed to offer a decryption key in return for a ransom payment of several million euros, threatening to leak the stolen data on the dark web should their demands not be met. Europol also says the organized crime group is suspected of having committed a string of targeted attacks against very large industrial groups in the Europe and North America from April 2020 onward. Ukrainian authorities say the arrested hacker has targeted 100 organizations and caused up to $150 million in damages in that time frame. It's possible the pair arrested during the strike were part of REvil, a well-known ransomware operator that reemerged from months of silence in September and was recently accused of stealing the ransoms paid to similar cyber criminals. REvil is known for being a prolific Russian-speaking group that demands high ransoms, so it matches Europol's description of the group. REvil's attacks typically follow the proceeds or process outlined in Europol's announcement, comprising the target system demanding a ransom in exchange for a decryption key and threatening to reveal private information in the form of its ransom if it's not paid. But so do attacks conducted by other groups, and even if REvil's ransomware was used in the attack, it might not be directly involved. The Ukrainian National Police statement indicates that only one of the people arrested as part of its strike is a hacker, though the other is described as an accomplice who helped to withdraw money obtained by criminal means. They also said the unidentified computers and mobile phones were seized in the strike. Okay. Interesting, they didn't note that REvil was based in Russia and then shut down and then moved to the Ukraine. So the next is that it's a photo that I'm retweeting, and it says, take a peek at the future Lyft rides in their new self-driving EVs. and you can see what it's like to ride in one of these self-driving Lyft vehicles, which have nice big screens. They look like iPads on the backs of the driver and passenger seats, because you're going to sit in the behind the driver's seat. So you have this iPad there that shows you your journey and your arrival time and etc. And the next one is EU lawmakers say that U.S. tech giants should be regulated where they are based. U.S. tech giants such as Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon should be regulated by the EU country where they are based under proposed EU rules, which Ireland says, thank God for that. And all the big tech companies said, thank God for that we're based in Ireland, and Ireland loves us because we make a lot of money for Ireland, and Ireland's not going to enforce GDPR on us. And it's all good. And the next one is that co-streaming rolls out to all creators on Facebook Gaming. Co-streaming is rolling out to all users on Facebook game streaming platform called Facebook Gaming. The feature had previously only been available to streamers individually, and now you can co-stream with your friends when you're playing the game together. So you can both become gaming celebrities in your game streams. Kind of genius. And the next one, via Faraz, is a Bloomberg article title about Adam Neumann, the previous CEO of WeWork. And it says, Adam Neumann-backed Go2 Global acquires German moped sharing startup. And Go2 Global Mobility, the Israeli mobility company backed by WeWork's co-founder Adam Neumann, is acquiring moped sharing startup Emmy. And so here come the moped sharing companies, just as predicted when we were talking about the big Indian moped company who's now making hundreds of thousands of electric mopeds that are like Tesla mopeds. And they've got little digital screens, and they've got GPS tracking built in, and they've got the ability to unlock digitally and remotely and everything else, which makes them the perfect vehicles to have vehicle sharing. So you don't need to buy an electric moped. They'll be covering your city, just like bicycles used to be, just like little electronic, those little e-scooters. And now you'll have actual mopeds where you can get two people riding, a moped that can go up a hill and around town and on the highways and everything else. So it's taking the little electronic scooters and taking it up a whole notch. Pretty interesting. Could reduce a whole lot of need for cars. Next one is inside the world's first Bitcoin rehab clinic, where traders have lost millions. A rehab clinic in Scotland claims to be the first in the world to treat cryptocurrency addiction. Castle Craig, a private hospital, can help you and your friends who might have an NFT problem. Do a little
for the simple fee of 1 Bitcoin.
Yeah, do they take Bitcoin as a form of payment? Okay, next up here.
They can sell your medical record as an NFT. Would be available on the market.
Let's see here. People DMing a whole bunch of interesting headlines here. Ken sends in this one from the Wall Street Journal, that the Fed prepares to launch review of possible central bank digital currency. Fed officials are divided on the matter, making it unlikely they will decide soon on whether to create a digital dollar. And I believe somebody just sent in this one, that Top Money Manager has a warning for young people continuing to work from home. Employees just starting out are risking their career advancement by continuing to work remotely, says head fund manager Ken Griffith. If you are early in your career, you are making a grave mistake not being back at work, Griffin said Monday in a conversation with Bloomberg at the Economic Club of Chicago. It's incredibly difficult to have a managerial experiences and interpersonal experiences that you need to have to take your career forward in a work remotely environment. Griffin, who runs Citadel's hedge fund business and Citadel Securities, also said working outside the office hinders innovation and indicated it may hurt the company's or the country's competitiveness. Workers in China have returned literally from almost the start of the pandemic, he said. So for our youngest members of our workforce, I'm gravely concerned that the loss of early career development opportunities is going to cost us dearly over the decades to come, he said. It's an interesting point. Additionally, it's more difficult to network digitally.
It's also not necessarily true.
Not necessarily.
Because
right.
Also the young ones are a lot more digital native than he is.
Yeah.
But I think there's a good amount of projection in these pronouncements.
Perhaps.
You also have to realize what he does for a living. He runs a trading firm. So if you worked in a trading firm, trading is something, quite frankly, you're better off doing it collectively in an office. He's not an investment bank. Investment bank, you could work remotely because you're never in the office anyway. He's a trading firm. And so if you understand trading, I understand where he's coming from for his business. That doesn't necessarily mean it relates to every other business. But for his business, I understand it.
So next up, Massachusetts startup hopes to move a step closer to commercial fusion. The company, founded by scientists at MIT, has been testing an extremely powerful magnet necessary to generate immense heat. Let's pray to sweet God that they do it and solve our energy problems. The next one.
Sorry, Tyler, I was talking to a bunch of fusion scientists as part of the supercomputing work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really excited about this development, but they were also saying that what this really enables is funding for a lot more experiments that need to be done.
Cool.
That they were still kind of toning it down in terms of what this means and in what time frame.
Okay, next up is from Apple launches a new coding guide for elementary school students. Apple's rolling out several new resources for elementary school students, including a new Everyone Can Code Early Learners Activity Guide. Love that. That's fantastic. And just tweeted that one out. And then the next one is if you... the new AirPod Pro firmware update so that it can work with Find My devices. And next up is Evan. Is this even real? Axos is reporting on the potential for the $1 trillion platinum coin. The $1 trillion platinum coin could be minted at the last minute if we don't raise the debt ceiling. $1 trillion platinum coin could be minted within hours of the Treasury Secretary's decision to do so, says the former director of the United States Mint. We could mint $1 trillion coin at the mint within a couple hours. On demand. We're ready. We're on standby. Why it matters. Congressional solutions to the debt ceiling problem could take weeks to implement, especially if the reconciliation process is used and time is running out. In case of emergency, $1 trillion coin could be deployed to bridge any gap between the money running out and the debt ceiling being raised. How it works. The U.S. Mint, which already produces a 1-ounce platinum eagle and has no shortage of platinum blanks ready in stock, producing $1 trillion coin would require only the denomination to be changed. This could be quickly executed on the existing plaster mold of the platinum eagle coin, says the Philip Deal, the former director of the United States Mint from 1994 to 2000. Then an automated process would transfer the new design to the plastic resin mold. Even if Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, has no intention of minting such a coin, there's no reason for her not to quietly instruct the Mint director to take those steps a day or two in advance. At that point, a coin could be struck in minutes at the West Point Mint. Even if it then needed to be physically deposited at the New York Fed, that's only a short helicopter ride away. Voila, we'd have bought ourselves the equivalent of $1 trillion increase in the debt limit without any impact on inflation, says the former U.S. State Mint director. I cannot believe we're even talking about this.
It's actually a $6 trillion proposal by a New York congressman to mint 6 of those coins.
I envision some Mint employees just salivating to do this. That would be way cool.
By the way, even if they did that, and even if somehow that gave them enough liquidity to make payments for a while, it would be a massive blow in confidence. It would look like gamesmanship, and it probably would blow out our interest rates anyway. So I mean that is a reality. Even if we technically didn't go into a default because of it, it would blow out the interest rates.
Isn't it just another extension on how we're already printing money and having fun?
Could they put Alfred E. Newman as the face on the coin? Then that or Chuck E. Cheese. That would really drive the image home.
So they're gonna print the money, but as somebody said, it's a matter of whether they mint coins or whether they do it the traditional way. But it's going to happen. Probably boiling the frog is better done a little bit slower than 6 coins.
The Chuck E. Cheese coin. The next one's from Evan. NASA's Armageddon-style asteroid deflection mission takes off in November. NASA has a launch date for that most Hollywood of missions, the double asteroid redirection test, which is basically a dry run of the movie Armageddon to test moving asteroids who might collide with Earth. A practical test of our ability to change the trajectory of an asteroid. And we're going to find out. Could we stop an asteroid from wiping us all out? Kind of a rerun.
I hope we don't do the opposite.
The next one from Professor Ossoff. COVID vaccines cut the risk of transmitting. Nature study shows that if after 2 COVID-19 jabs, you still contract Delta variant, you are less likely to infect your close contacts than are unvaccinated people with Delta. Bad news is that the protection lasts just 3 months after the second jab. And troll farms reached 140 million Americans a month on Facebook before the 2020 election. Internal report shows in the run-up to the 2020 elections, the most highly contested U.S. in history, Facebook's most popular pages for Christian and Black content were being run by Eastern European troll farms. So election meddling from Eastern European troll farms. Now, I wonder who this could be.
They were always my soul brothers. The Eastern Europeans, we connect so well.
And let's play a little Tech News Jeopardy here. Who do we think is behind the election meddling troll farms when Facebook itself and Twitter have said that the troll farms usually are coming from Russia and China, and one of those two countries has a very long, rich history of election meddling?
That's a tricky one.
This is a really tricky one. We're just going to have to wait until we come back next time in about 5 hours when we meet again for another Tech News Around the World. You go ahead and you think hard on that one.